But I do have 7 stories for you today. It's kind of a mixed bunch of stories. Number 1. So I grew up in a very haunted house, and I have literally stories for days of stuff that happened to me. One specific story right now, because today is the 10th anniversary of the event. So 10 years ago, I was still living with my parents in my childhood home. So on this day, it was the afternoon, and there was a small house fire in our next door neighbor's house. There was no chance of it spreading, so I was in the bathroom getting ready for work. I suddenly hear my dad call my name. "Hey, Sarah." And I went to go look for him, realizing that the house was empty and my dad was across the street outside looking at the fire. This scared me so bad that whatever was in the house knew my name and could mimic my father. But then after talking about it with my mom, we realized that something like this happened before. My grandma used to live with us, and one time she got so mad saying my mom was calling her name. My mom wasn't. Wondering if anyone has any insight on this. Thank you for reading. Number 2. When I was young, I always feared a specific part of the hallway in front of my room. At night, I couldn't leave my room because I knew something was there standing, though I couldn't see anything. A couple years later, I moved to the room at the other side of the hallway, but still felt there was something in that specific place, which is in front of the bathroom of my old room. I know there's something staring at me from there. I can't see my old room from my actual room, and it creeps me out every now and then. There was one day actually where I asked if someone was there, and later that day I saw from the side of my eye a woman with black hair and a white old summer shirt. She had no face, and I knew she is the one that still watched me from that specific spot. I haven't seen her since, but she hasn't left. It's awkward every time I go to the bathroom or sit at my desk in front of my door, where I can see my old room and the bathroom. What should I do? I mean, she hasn't tried to hurt me, and she hasn't moved in a while. Any thoughts? Number 3. So growing up, I've never been around any spirits. I've always seen shows about it, but never believed it to be true until recently. I've moved into a new place with my girlfriend, and growing up, she said she had been around spirits, but personally not me. My girlfriend has said she had something whisper in her ear while no one being home. Recently, I personally have been noticing, I guess, what you can call activity. We were watching TV one night when all of a sudden we hear footsteps walking up the stairs, and then they stop. Now it's a pretty old house. By now, I've digested what noise it was, and these were literally stair steps, as if someone was walking up the stairs. Literally having goosebumps just thinking about it. I didn't say anything to her, as I heard they feed off fear. I didn't want to make my girlfriend scared, so we didn't speak on it until another day when she brought it up. After this incident, I recall and my girlfriend having a conversation that led to her telling me she feels a presence inside our room at night right by the door. She says she feels like it watches us sleep. My girlfriend says it may be a lost soul, as it hasn't harmed us in any way, but it has played tricks, to say the least, like turning off lights, moving a spray can right in front of me while I was in the bathroom. I don't know much, but I know that if it has a mentality to play tricks, then a malicious intent may not be too far behind. But tonight, I feel I got a small taste of what's to come. Tonight, I felt what my girlfriend feels at night. I got up to use the restroom, and when I got back, something just felt off. I just felt like I was being watched. I shrugged it off and tried to go back to sleep. Been up for the past 3 hours. Every time I try and go to sleep, I hear a noise in the same area my girlfriend referred to. I just felt like I was being watched. I shrugged it off and tried to go back to sleep. Been up for the past 3 hours. Every time I try and go to sleep, I hear a noise in the same area my girlfriend referred to. It's like if something drops. It's hard to describe, nonetheless, it keeps me awake. I try to shrug it off. Now the part that scares me. Let me give a little background into the info before. When I go to sleep, I usually don't struggle at all. I fall asleep ever since I was a kid. I learned to clear my mind before going to sleep. I find it's the fastest way to sleep. And I'm not different than anyone else. Some nights I find myself up thinking, but I can combat this by focusing. And that always does the trick since I can remember, but not tonight. I may sound crazy, but this time, even when I focused, I don't know how to describe it. A thought would come in my mind, but it didn't feel like mine. I need help. If anyone can please shine some light and give advice. I've done a little research and I'm hearing that I need a spirit guide, but I don't know where to begin to get one or in the route I should go. If anyone can help me, it would be greatly appreciated. Number 4. My parents were divorced, so I grew up in 2 houses in the UK. The first house was 650 years old. Wonky floors, low doorways, servants' living area and main living area, the lot. Had many spooky situations there. Second house was 100 years old. It was for sale when we bought it because the owner had died of cancer. In my house, later found out it was in my bedroom. Thanks, Mom. I saw this man sitting on a chair in my room once when I was a child, which was when I was told about the death of the previous owner after telling my mom what I saw. Anyway, throughout my life in both of these houses, I have consistently heard someone saying my name. Not always the same voice, and sometimes it would sound like the voice of my own living family members. I'd shout down to them to see what they wanted, and they had never called me. It happened at least once a week. 10 years later, I haven't heard it for ages. Then a few days ago, I was falling asleep in my house, built in 1838, and I clearly heard my boyfriend shout for me. I got up to see what he wanted, as if he was downstairs watching TV. When I got down, he was asleep on the sofa. I thought he was messing with me, so I woke him up, and it was clear he was genuinely had been asleep. So am I haunted? I am worried it was schizophrenia. But considering it stopped for years and years, I'm thinking it's not. Number 5. I have had many experiences with ghosts, and I am a fan of those sorts of things, and I tend to get myself into trouble with spirits. I do, however, need advice on if this was an encounter with a ghost because I'm not sure myself. Back when I was a little girl, maybe around 4 or 5, I remember being at my stepdad's apartment with my mom and 2 stepsisters. Me and my stepsisters were playing with the computer when we heard a thump in the closet. The closet was located right behind the computer, but a wall was separating the closet and us. Anyways, we peek over to see a Halloween decor scarecrow peeking out of the now very open glass closet doors. It was facing us and leaning out sideways, like it was purposely looking at us. Of course, we screamed and called for our parents that were sitting on the balcony having a smoke. I know it might sound silly, but I was very positive it was a ghost or spirit because his apartment was frequently engaged with paranormal activity, like drawers opening and doors slamming and footsteps in the middle of the night when everyone was asleep. I think about this so often. Not that I'm scared anymore, I'm just wondering if it was an encounter or something along the lines of that. Number 6. I used to feed a stray dog. Let's call him Brown. I had known for 2 years since he was a pup. He was a very playful and excited dog, as some of us like. One night he was acting strange, scared to be precise. He was terrified and seemed disturbed. I allowed him inside my house for the night. Middle of the night, around 2 a.m., he started crying and barked aggressively. I allowed him into my bed. Fast forward into the next morning, he vanished. I tried searching the forest, but no trace. A few months later, another stray pup came into my life. As usual, I feed him every day. After a few months, he behaved exactly the same. Completely terrified of something or someone, but he wouldn't stop shaking. I allowed him in my house, but the same scenario replayed. Middle of the night, he managed to crawl out and ran into the woods. I searched the forest in the morning. I don't know what is happening. Were they possibly sick? Is this normal? Should I inform on the authorities? I asked the same in a few other communities, praying for something rational and scientific. As the days pass, I'm getting more paranoid. I failed to mention my previous experience in the post, but I had a dog named Pinchu, and he too exhibited the same behavior and then vanished. In conclusion, this is the 3rd time this has occurred. Number 7. It had been a couple of months since my niece was last over at my place. And over this past weekend, my niece slept over and she told me some freaky ass shit. It was getting close to bedtime and she was extremely scared to go to bed. She began to tell me she has a demon at her home and she was scared it followed her to my place. She began to tell me how this demon looked. She said it was very tall, big, huge horns, bright glowing red eyes, and sometimes wears a pink outfit. I didn't want to ask too many questions because truthfully it was scaring the shit out of me. She's only 8 years old, but she does love horror films. I told her she should maybe lay off the scary movies a bit. I saged my entire place, explained to her it helps cleanse and get rid of negative energy. She thankfully had a good night's sleep. Told my brother about it the next day, and he had no idea that this was happening at home. My question is, has anyone else gone through something like this? Seen this exact thing? Heard of this exact thing? Can't stop thinking about it. And truthfully, very worried for her. She's been through so much. She lost her mom to COVID 2 years ago. Her aunt was shot and killed 3 months ago. Her other grandma has tried to commit unaliving twice. And she lives with my mother and other brother who aren't the best of people. So death and negative energy is always near her. Okay, everyone, I hope that you enjoyed this collection of stories. When I usually read these stories, some people ask questions, and I always want to respond to them within the story, give the best advice I can. You know, I'm not a professional or anything like that, and then I thought about maybe doing sometimes, maybe once a month, the ones that are very interesting and the ones that I can actually give really good advice about. I thought about reading them on a live stream and then giving that advice and then letting y'all chime in. What do y'all think about that? Let me know in the comments below. I love y'all so much. I will see y'all for this Saturday's creepypasta story. Remember, every Saturday from now on will be Creepypasta Saturdays. I'll see y'all then. Remember, it's scary out there and stay safe. Please like and subscribe. Number 1. I am a truck driver, and I am only home on weekends. My wife has been experiencing noises coming from the basement. Knocking, banging, things dropping like sounds. Then now she's hearing voices, and the bathroom light going on and off while it's in the shower, on and off occurrence. And on top it all off, our front door was wide open this morning. It was locked, and she tugged it before bed. We have 3 dogs that would definitely let us know if there was someone physically in our house. We have multiple deceased loved ones, and we think it's one of them letting us know they'll always be with us. I am definitely setting up a camera on the interior of our front door. Number 2. My house is haunted for sure, but the type of haunted that isn't consistent. Personal opinion. My house is near a portal or on one. As they come and go, never really staying. I've had instances of children's laughter, shadows, cold spots that move, hissing cats at doorways, one spook cat on the stairway, creaking stairs when no one was on them, lights not working in the bathroom at night that faces the stairwell, at night that faces the stairs, but then work the next day. And just the overall feeling something is watching me from the stairs when I'm sitting on the toilet, and sometimes when I lie in bed. Most things happen on the stairs or in our closet. The closet is flush to the stairs. They share a wall, and once in a while the kitchen, but it's super rare. Well, last night was a kitchen nightmare. I had just left the kitchen after making tea and getting some kids some Kool-Aid. I sat down. My husband was starting to make dinner. He was making deer meat spaghetti. I hate the taste of deer meat, so he hiding the gamey flavor with spices so it just tastes like normal beef. I don't know how he does it, but it impresses me. He reaches underneath one of the cabinets and let out a yell and what the fuck. He scurried out of the kitchen, like backing away. Now this guy isn't scared of anything. Like I remember freaking out with the kids' laughter and he hardly budged, just told me ignore it. That's what he usually does with the paranormal stuff. Kind of used to it, he says, until he saw the hand. He said he was reaching down to get a pan and a freaking ghost hand zoomed past in the cabinet. It's one of those deep pocketed ones at the bottom that holds a bunch of pans. Our son likes to get in sometimes. He's 2, and he can easily shut the door in tons of room. So whatever the hand was disappeared in the wall cabinet. This kitchen is flush to our neighbors. This is a townhome. He was freaking out. He kept yelling, I saw a hand, a hand. I don't think he's ever seen a ghost. Maybe heard them, smelled them. Some ghosts have sense, or felt them. But ever seen one? I don't think so. He still went back in to make dinner after he calmed for a second. I'll admit I was pretty uncaring. I said, oh, a hand? Fun. Laughed out loud. I think I've just learned if you ignore, they usually don't bother you. They do feed off fear, I think, or deep emotions. I do feel a little paranoid at times. I'll keep updating if anything else interesting happens at the house. Three. So almost every night at about 4:30, a thing, I don't know if it's a person or what it is, comes slowly up the stairs and stops in front of the door to my room. And stops there and just stands there till about 5:30 and then slowly walks down the stairs again. I never went and opened the door. I always just sit in silence and it goes away. That is if I'm awake, of course. If I'm not awake, I don't know if it's there or not. Anyway, I can always hear the breathing through the door. It happens often and I've just gotten used to it being there. I told my parents, my friends, my ex-girlfriend, everyone just thinks I'm crazy. That's why I came here to ask anyone knows what it is or had an experience or had a similar encounter. Also, it started when I was 8 years old. Now I'm 16. We still live in the same house. If anyone knows anything, please let me know. Thanks. Number 4. The best man of our wedding and my husband's lifelong best friend Terry died about 2 years after we were married. It was a very sudden and very unexpected. He had even joked with him on the phone the night before he died in his sleep. My husband was asked to be a pallbearer at the funeral. We were so poor when we first started out. It literally took every penny we had, $700, to buy my husband a sports coat and for the funeral. My husband is 6'8" tall and over 300 pounds, so it had to be a custom made. It's easy if you're tall or big, not so much if you're tall and big. We could not afford an entire suit. This happened in December, so we decided to celebrate Christmas that year since all of our money went towards the sports coat. We were bummed, like, what can you do? Then we started finding money everywhere. I found a $50 in the dryer after doing laundry. The company my husband worked at decided to drop the employees off at a local gambling town. Tackiest Christmas party idea ever for the evening. I took one of the quarters and put it in the machine just out of boredom. I won $300. My husband found money in his wallet, and we both found money hidden in our desk. We ended up with exactly $700, so we were able to celebrate Christmas after all. A few months later, we moved to our house we live in now. The strangeness came with us. My husband and Terry were roommates before our wedding, and they fought like two little old ladies. My husband liked to watch TV in the evening. Terry did not. For a while, our TV would only come on if I pushed the button on the remote. It would not work for my husband at all. Out of frustration, my husband took things apart, determined to fix whatever was broken, but nothing was broken. There was no logical reason. It just wouldn't work for him. Then Christmas rolled around again. Terry liked flashy lights on the tree, and my husband liked solid lights. Their fights about it as roommates was hilarious. One would always change the settings when the other wasn't looking, and it went back and forth the entire time the tree was up. Well, we put our tree up, with the lights set to solid, of course, but every time my husband looked at the tree, they were flashing. He would try to change the bulb that decided if the rest flashed or stayed lit constantly, but the bulb was set up correctly. Then I would get home from work and my husband would be beside himself, like a little old lady, and demanded that I watch the lights. I did. They were not flashing, but whenever I left the room, they would flash. I thought it was hilarious and exactly the sort of thing Terry would do. Then we got a pug named Sarah. Terry and I both adored pugs. She was the cutest thing and loved to play. One morning I was in the shower in the master bathroom. I could hear a door stop on the other side of the house, a twanging away. It makes a very distinct sound. If you ever heard it, go flick one and you will hear it. And at the time I thought, oh, how funny. Sarah is playing with the doorstop. But I got out of the shower and Sarah was in the bathroom with me. I could still hear the doorstop. So I laughed and told Terry to cool it, and it stopped. Silly thing is this happened for a couple of years. Then one night I had a dream that I was talking with Terry. He was telling me how mad he was that he died. And we reminisced about the good times for 3 of us over the years. My husband said I was laughing and then crying in my sleep all night. He tried to wake me, but couldn't. I figured that was his goodbye. Fun, silly stuff stopped after that. My best friend since 8th grade, Sarah. The pug was named after her, with her permission. Fought a long battle with breast cancer, and then it spread to her brain. Then I was diagnosed with brain cancer. For a while, we didn't know which of us was going to outlive the other. I won. So, of course, we joked about it. I promised not to divulge the more sordid details of our early 20s love life. I made her promise to tell funny stories about me at my celebration of life. I just want everyone to eat BBQ and laugh, not cry in the church. I just asked that she please edit stories as needed to keep it clean. She agreed to keep everything appropriate for all ages. We also promised to haunt each other after we passed. She passed away in March of 2021. That summer, and my husband and I were living in a room and heard the loudest bang come from the laundry room. It was a gunshot loud. We were afraid the washing machine just blew up because we had just replaced the dryer. And that's usually how things go for us. We opened the laundry door, and the giant Costco-sized jug of laundry soap somehow fell off the flat surface of the dryer. The container broke and soap was everywhere. The more we tried to clean it up, the sudsier it got. I did the splits every time in the process, not by choice. It was truly a horrible mess. As I am cleaning and being super annoyed, my husband thought it was Sarah doing her promise haunting. One thing about Sarah was that she loved her puns. So he said this was her clean joke to pull on me. I didn't mind cleaning up the soap so much after he said that. May you all have best friends who haunt you in the best ways possible. This next story is by SG Horrors. He actually has a blog spot. I'm going to leave the link to his blog down below. Number 5. Hello. This story didn't happen to me, but a relative of mine. Some backstory. They are a family of 5 staying together. Parents, 2 siblings, and my grandma. So my grandma had been staying with my aunt and my cousins for a while before she passed on. On the day she passed, the whole family came down. Everyone was greatly affected. My grandma was one of the nicest people in the world, and she took care of all of us equally. I frequently visited my aunt's house to meet my grandma, and she would constantly give me pocket money and cook for me even though she was not well herself. However, it affected my cousins the most since they've been staying with my grandma since birth. And at this point, they were all around 12 years old and 9 years old already. After that day, my aunt realized that her younger daughter started spending less time with the family and locked herself in her room more often. Let's call my older cousin P and my younger cousin Q to make it easier. My aunt started to become suspicious of Q and thought she had a boyfriend. So she decided to ask P to be her spy. The next day, P told my aunt that Q claimed to be talking to Grandma, and she asked P to keep it a secret. After my aunt told my husband about this, Q received a very bad scolding, and they were reinforced that Grandma is no longer around. From that day onward, she was forced to leave the door open, and P was forced to sleep in her room with her. A few days went by, and nothing happened. However, about a week later, weird things started happening again. P claimed that Q started creeping out of the room slowly and started talking to Grandma in the kitchen again. She informed her mom again, but this time, instead of confronting her, my aunt and her husband decided to eavesdrop on the conversation. Initially, they thought that Q was developing mental issues like depression, etc. But when the eavesdropped the conversation, they knew something was not right. Q was giggling the whole time while talking to Grandma. The conversation also sounded real. They talked about what she ate, what she did in school, and her problems. They eavesdropped for a few nights, and one day they decided to take actions. When they stepped into the kitchen, what they saw really proved to them that Q needs professional help. In Q's hands was a raw chicken meat, and she was reaching out across the dining table as if she was feeding somebody. My aunt screamed, and Q was startled. I wasn't there to witness this, but I could imagine how bad it was. He told me that Q started crying and asking, "Where did next go?" I forgot what happened next, but the next morning my uncle brought the Utahs over to help them. Utahs is like a Muslim version of a priest, for those who don't know. The Utahs came, and Q immediately acted weird. She wasn't possessed or anything. She kept on asking why the Utahs came and says she don't like it. When the Utah started reading some Quranic versions, Q started shouting in Malay, "Stop Nanik, it's in pain!" So no one else saw Nanik except for Q. Also, we Muslims do not believe in spirits of the dead, meaning once you passed on, you'll go to the afterlife and won't come back as spirits. The Utahs asked my aunt whether she kept any items that Grandma left behind. That's when my aunt realized Q's kept the dress, or maybe pajamas that my grandma wore on the day she passed, and to be honest, it was filthy. They took the dress and passed it to the Utahs, while my uncle helped Q in his arms, since she was getting restless and wanted to stop my aunt. The Utahs placed the dress in a bucket of water, and Quranic verses read into it, something like holy water. The Utahs explained that the filthy clothes attracted certain jinns, and also known as demons, and it took the form of Grandma. The jinn took advantage of Q's emotional state to use her. After the whole ritual, the dress was disposed, and Q was quite affected by the whole thing. Eventually, Q became better, and now she is back to normal. Personally, I do not find this story scary, but I thought it was a good story to share. I find the story more sad. Sad because the love of all of us had for Grandma, especially Q, was shown and moving and may not be easy for everyone. I know all of us still miss Grandma, but we all know that she is in a better place. Thank you for reading my story. Number 6. In the winter of 2020, one of our close family members that lived with my parents, we will call him Gio, died in a car accident. Gio pulled out in front of a big pickup truck with a full load on the trailer and got hit head on. He sadly didn't survive the night at the hospital. He was a great guy. He was in his 50s and would help my parents with chores around the house, getting groceries, and helped with anything they asked. I'll tell 3 different stories from 3 different people about the experiences they had right after Gio's passing. About 2 days after Gio's passing, my father was replacing a light bulb in the hallway right outside of Gio's room. While he was changing it, he kept hearing footsteps, creaking and shuffling coming from his room. And when no one was in there and lights were off, when my father finished changing the light bulb with the same wattage as the old bulb, he turned it on and went to investigate Gio's room to see what all the noise was about. Right when he walked into his room, the fresh light bulb he just put in exploded right behind him. A coincidence, maybe. I wonder if my father walked through Gio and disturbed his energy when he entered his room. At our house, after a week after Gio's passing, I kept feeling like someone was watching me from the living room when my wife and I would do our nightly routine. When you come out of the bathroom to look to the left, after 4 stairs, they go down into a big living room with a raised ceiling. Every night for about a week, when we would do our nightly routine, before I entered the bathroom, I would look down into the living room in the far right corner, and it felt like someone was down there near the recliner, just watching while we got ready for bed. And if I would have got out of the bed in the middle of the night, I felt that presence also. Fast forward about 3 months later, I told my wife about what I was experiencing, and she looked at me with a side smile and said, I felt it too. After we made the connection, we thought it must have been Gio saying goodbye before he passed over, because he always sat in the recliner when he visited. A few days after Gio passed, my parents had a little get-together at their house with a few family members and friends, just to lift everyone's spirits with dinner and company for the evening. When one of the girls that was there, we'll call her Bella, that was 4 years old at the time, got home from the party, her mother asked her how the party was and who was all there. She was naming off everyone, and the last name was Geos. Her mother looked at her puzzled and said, "Honey, Geo passed away a few days ago. He couldn't be at the party." Bella looked at her and said in an adamant tone, "I saw Geo, Mom. He was sitting in the living room in his recliner. He waved at me and smiled." Okay, that's all the stories we have for today. I have to collect more. I hope you'll have a very good Thanksgiving and your bellies get full of lots of food. And I will see y'all for our creepy pasta Saturday. But until then, remember, it's scary out there. Love y'all so much. Please like and subscribe. Number 1. A friend called me today, November 1st, to let me know what happened to him yesterday on Halloween. Thought it was a little spooky. My friend is in Colorado for a work assignment and has been sick with a cold while there. For context, we both live in Texas. I am currently in Texas. On his way into a store yesterday to pick up some cold medicine, he claims to have seen me, or someone who looked just like me walking by him 5 feet away. He pauses, shouts my name. The doppelganger continues to walk on by without acknowledging my friend. My friend then shouts an apology again with no acknowledgement. Sounds like a case of mistaken identity. A coincidence? My friend calls his wife later on to tell her about what happened. She insists that he calls me too. Basically, make sure I'm still alive. Her reasoning was that the veil is thin on Halloween. He basically told him that he has to call to make sure I'm still alive. I am still alive. My friend thinks that he must have just been mistaken or sick enough to hallucinate seeing me in Colorado. It shook him and his wife up, though. After hearing the story, I can't help but wonder about the possibility for something more exciting than mistaken identity, especially if the doppelganger didn't even respond. Would a ghost or hallucination be able to respond? What do y'all think? Finding out about this story was a highlight of my day, so I'd figured I'd share it. Number 2. This morning I was getting my toddler dressed and we heard someone talking out in the living room. My older son was in the kitchen and didn't hear it. My partner is at work, so we definitely shouldn't be hearing him talking. It wasn't my older son talking to himself, but it sounded like a man's voice. My toddler got excited because he thought it was his dad coming home from work. 2 weeks ago, I was laying in bed. My 2-year-old climbed in bed with me at 5:30 a.m. I told him to go get in his bed so I could have a minute to wake up. His bed is next to mine. I was laying on my back when I saw him leave the room instead of going to his bed. I told him not to leave the room. He went to his bed. A couple minutes later, I saw him leave the room. He was wearing his robe, and the door opened. I sat up and said, "Hey, get back here." When I looked over at his bed, he is still in his bed. I was so freaked out. I have a camera in my living room, but I wasn't subscribed to storage. It did pick up movement at both of the times I saw my son leave the room. The day before this, there was a movement in my older son's room. I was home alone and the cat was on my lap. She even reacted to it. My older son is 10 and says sometimes he's woken up at night to his toys in his toy bin being jostled around. Number 3. A couple months back, I was driving home late at night from work. I can't remember what time, but it was well past 1 a.m. Sure, I was a bit tired, but I have been worse and never seen anything of the sort. I could see a figure in the distance. I saw the head and torso, but it was just a black figure. The road was really dark. My brain instantly thought, well done for crossing while I'm coming at you. So I start slowing down until I'm almost at a complete stop. The moment my headlights hit the figure, it vanishes. My heart drops to my stomach and I feel all the color drain from my face. Mind you, I take this route home every day. At times even later than this, and this has never happened before. I keep thinking my mind was playing tricks on me, but I know what I saw. It was there one moment and gone the next. It was freaky. Number 4. A weird experience with my homemade Ouija board. Note number 1. I'm well aware that the idiometer is, and if this is my subconscious, I would really like to know what all this encrypted speech isn't. I used it alone. Note number 2. I'm not religious in any way, and I don't have any strong stands on the paranormal. Note number 3. Not doing it out of boredom. I have my personal reasons. Not writing this for attention. I just need some insight if anyone's got any. Hi all. I hope you're all and your loved ones are in good health. This is my first time writing here. I'm sorry if this is not appropriate for the particular sub. I am new to this world. I posted in other places, but didn't get any useful insight. And I am still in the same situation, confused along with some other feelings. The 2 first paragraphs I'm going to write on here are the things that happened yesterday. Things I have already shared on other subs. The last will be what happened today. I made a homemade Ouija board a few days ago, but I did not use it right away. I kept decorating it and making it arty or whatever. I think it was just procrastinating using it. Yesterday evening, I began by saying a simple prayer, then I put my hand on the thing. I asked if someone was there. Nothing happened for 2 minutes or so. I kept waiting, and I asked, and at some point it slowly started moving to yes. I asked for the name, and it spelled Amdu, A-M-M-D-U. I looked and I couldn't find anything about that particular name. Then I asked what it was doing here, and it kept spelling the letter A. Then to no. A no? I asked and it said yes. I asked what that means, and it went to the letter B and then yes. B, yes. I asked, and it didn't respond anymore, so I asked if we could say goodbye. It didn't respond, so I moved it slowly to goodbye and said goodbye. From here onward, I won't be able to contact any other entity than the one that's talking. I don't know why yet. Later the same evening, I picked up the board again, said my prayer, and began. By the way, I did not ask. From the session onwards, I knew it wasn't the same entity from before, Amdu. It was someone else who would not say what its name was. Whenever I asked, it would spell random stuff. And when I pronounce it and ask if that's what its name was, it would go to the sun, moon. I tried any questions, formulations of them, and it kept responding with different random letter combinations that I couldn't make any sense of. I ended the seance and asked on Reddit, and someone mentioned that not all entities are able to spell. So I went back to the board and asked if it spoke English. It said yes. I asked if it can spell. It said yes. Then I asked if it could tell me the name. It spelled out random stuff and went to the sun, moon. Anyways, I spent some 15 minutes or so talking to it in that random letters way. And finally I figured out that maybe it was using the first letter of each word, because I would sometimes guess a word or a phrase from the random letters it spelled, and it would say yes. At some point, It said turn on the light. Said A, sun, yes, we went back and forth. Until I asked, do you want me to turn on the lights? It immediately said yes. After this, it kept going to the sun and the moon and saying, I'm sun, you are moon. You are moon, I am sun. I could not get the conversation to go any other direction. It seemed to be really stuck on the sun and moon I drew on the board. Or there was something it wanted to tell me through that. After some time, I started going to the sun and then the moon, then to the spell character G. Sun, moon, G, or moon, sun, G, interchangeably. What does that mean multiple times? And it kept moving faster and faster. Sun, moon, G. Then I figured out it wanted me to guess, because somehow it managed to spell game. A sun, moon, G-A-G-A, I laughed. A-G, sun, moon, G-A-M-E, for a minute or so until it spelled it. So I asked, do you want me to guess? And it said yes, sun, moon, G. I said moon. It said sun 1, moon 0. And sometimes it would spell out some random letters, then moon, sun, G, and it would go to moon, to sun 2 minutes later or so until it spelled it. And once it went 6, and another time it went 1. I don't remember, and that was all. I forgot to write it down. At some point it asked again, sun, moon, G. I said sun and moon. Silly me. It went aggressively, moon, sun, G. I went to goodbye and said goodbye. Probably a mistake, but I was a bit freaked out. Oh yes, and about the spelling and speaking English in my first session, before I asked if it spoke or could spell English, I figured maybe it was speaking some other language. So at some point we were talking about the alphabet, and I tried to teach it to spell out some stuff. It seemed to be amused by it. I mostly kept focusing on the moon. It mostly kept focusing on the moon and sun. I showed it how sun, moon are spelled, and it used its own words in its language and told me what it was. Basically, the sun and the moon. That was when I figured it wanted me to turn on the lights in the room. Here, they are. I don't know if it's serious or if it was just playing around. Ano, A-N-O, equals moon. Nin is N-E-N, equals sun. And D, J-I-J, turn light on. Because I had the lights off, and at some point randomly asked if it wanted me to turn the lights on. It said yes. I asked why, and it went sun, moon, no. Beam, turn light off. Today, 2 hours ago, it started as before with a prayer, this time putting more energy towards it than I began. I instantly felt that it was the same one, but I had to ask, so I asked, and it said yes, the sun, moon, G. Really? Question mark. I asked if it was a sun, and it said sun, moon, yes. I asked if it was a moon, it said moon, sun, yes. I asked if it was a moon, it said moon, sun, yes. At some point it said a sun, yes. 0. Then a moon, sun, and then a moon, yes, 1. Another time, a reverse. I would assume it was playing around. Clever me. I decided to ask if it was evil. It went towards yes, and went back to the no. Suspicious. And then a sun, yes. I asked, are you sure? It went a sun, yes, 1. I said, what's your name? And before I could finish the question, it started moving down to goodbye. So I stopped it, and I asked, you don't want to talk? It went quickly to the sun, and then to no, and then proceeded to say goodbye. I said goodbye. That was earlier this evening. I haven't played it again since. I don't know if I should. I probably will. But does anyone have any insight to any of this? I am having a bit of a hard time making sense of it. Update 1. Well, I waited till morning and used it again. Figured maybe it wanted me to talk during the day. And I got the same entity. Would not say anything but moon, sun, G. Some moon, G, a sun, some number, a moon, some number, and then some G. Then it wanted to count down. I did not let it do that. Then it wanted to count up. I didn't let it do that. It then went from sun, moon, G, and proceeded to say goodbye. And I stopped and asked, you don't want to talk? It went to no, and then sun, moon, G, and proceeded to say goodbye. Update 2. Still can't talk to anyone else other than that entity. And I know we're doing figures of 8 horizontally, figure vertically. I almost didn't catch it. It was doing sun, moon, 1, sun, 1, moon, 0. I was like, hold on just a minute. What are you doing? We're not doing that. And it would just go doing it into a different way. M, sun, N, moon. I stopped it and asked, why are you doing that? And it would just go about doing it without landing on anything. I asked, we can say goodbye. It would actually go to goodbye halfway and then moon N, sun M. I was like, no. We're not doing that. We're saying goodbye. It went to goodbye and I forced it through, even though it felt like it wanted to move back. Number 5. What started it all is when my mom brought home some old paintings from her work. She works at an old people's house. So, at an old people's home. So, there's been some dust there. I started noticing at night the house just felt weird. Like something just wrong was going on. This kind of all led up to a night where a piece of Tupperware fell by itself. And then I started hearing quite unintelligible static like voices coming from the kitchen. The Alexa we have was unplugged too, so it couldn't have been that. I told my mom the next day, and since she's pretty spiritual too, we talked about it and suspected it might have been the paintings that she brought in. She threw away the paintings and everything completely went back to normal. I know it all sounds pretty tame, but experiencing it, it was actually pretty scary. Number 6. Well, it might be a couple of weeks, so I thought I was okay, but it's back. I'm only posting this here since the same person thing is in my dream. I had a dream I was at my friend's, but she lived in a huge apartment with all glass windows. I was walking down a long hallway and saw a man breaking in. So I ran to get a weapon and she said, got it. I went to grab something, but when I got to them, they were already standing off. She grabbed lighter fluid and doused him and lit the flame, but before it got to him, he grabbed her. They both started burning. He said he wasn't dying alone. I managed to help her get away and call 911. When I turned around, he was gone. There were pieces of flesh on the floor. They took us both to the hospital. I was looking for her, and she was talking to a caseworker whose face kept shifting. It looked like a normal human, but it couldn't get its face right. It kept shifting from male to female in almost a fluid way. I got angry and asked why they weren't talking to me. He was in pain, and I was the one who saw everything. Person got someone else to come to get me and put me with other burn patients. I don't remember getting burned. Woke up crying. I've actually never seen faces in my dreams until these past 3. I've always known who they were generally supposed to be, but never actually saw the actual faces. I'm afraid to tell my family because I don't want to upset them, and I also don't want them to think I'm completely insane, which is how I'm feeling at the moment. Number 7. When I was growing up, I lived with my grandmother, and we had a dog named Wally. We had him since he was a puppy. He had bad health issues. He ended up passing away in 2017 at 11, and he had very bad diabetes. 4 years went by with absolutely no sign of him anywhere until summer 2021. It was a regular night. Stumbled into the bathroom late at night. The hallway was very dark. I couldn't see. As I was walking just before I reached the bathroom, right outside my grandmother's door, I stepped on something. and almost fell over. I didn't see a thing. It was fur. It felt just like a dog. Felt just like his coat. I was freaked out, pulled my foot back, and turned the light switch on. There was absolutely nothing there. I'm still stumped as to what this was. There is no mistaking that I tripped over a dog. Felt the fur on my feet. It was so damn weird. I even felt body heat, as if the thing was living, but there was nothing there. The even more convincing part, this is the same spot that Wally always laid in, right outside my grandmother's door. All right, y'all. Hope y'all enjoyed those 7 stories. I hope y'all have a very good week. I'll see you on Thursday. But remember, until then, it's scary out there. Love y'all so much. Please like and subscribe. Story 1. My mom and I stayed on the 10th or 11th floor of the Omni Park House in Boston. This was a floor that is said to be one of the most haunted ones, and it was right. When we got to the floor, there was one flickering overhead light. None of the others were, and camera footage showed odd orbs of light in the hallway too. When we got to the room, all was normal, and we continued our stay. The next creepy encounter was when I had gone to sleep. I woke up and I just felt like something was up. I then felt like someone had sat or put pressure on the end of the bed near my feet. I rolled over and made sure not to open my eyes. Though I rolled back over and opened my eyes and saw a man who looked almost see-through. He didn't do anything, and I went back to sleep, though I did feel a little shook. Then the Charles Dickens mirror. I had read that if you said his name thrice, something would happen, so I did. Almost instantly, I felt a heavy weight in my body. I remember going to the gift shop and still feeling that way, almost needing to sit down, felt difficult to breathe. This didn't leave me until we left the entire hotel. My mom's pictures, she took live photos, showed the same orbs from the hallway. It was overall an interesting stay, and I would go to that hotel again. Story 2. About 12 years ago, I worked in a nursing home that used to be a tuberculosis sanitarium. It opened in 1930, and at some point in the 1970s, it was converted into a state-run nursing home. The building is huge, originally over 600 beds, but a lot of the wings and floors are closed off due to bad conditions. There are 4 floors, and the building is divided into A, B, and C units. The bottom of the A unit is where the admin offices are, and the floors above that were closed off. When I started, they took us on a tour, and we went up the elevator into the abandoned A unit floors. On one floor, there were jail cells, where the prisoners with TB were held. There were chains hanging from the ceiling. As soon as the elevator doors opened, I could feel a cold breeze, and it felt like I was being watched our entire time there. Other people felt it too. I have a photo of the outside of A unit that I took one evening on break. It shows how eerie the building is, and it looks like, to me at least, there's a figure in one of the windows. I was working evening shift, 3 to 11, and one night after everyone had been put to bed, I decided to do some exploring in a closed-off section off of Unit B. I found the old morgue and decided to go inside. I felt someone behind me, and a chill ran down my spine. I was frozen and afraid to turn around. Then I heard a door opening down the hallway. I was the only one in that part of the building. I left as fast as I could run, through the double doors back into the populated area. Something told me not to look back, but I did, and I saw a gray face smiling at me through the glass pane of the door. That was the biggest experience there. Needless to say, I didn't go exploring anymore. Late at night, the elevators would go to the top of the floors that weren't being used. We had to use these elevators to get back to the main floor exit, and I was always afraid of what I'd see when the doors opened after it had been on the 4th floor. I never felt alone on those elevators. I used to work at an Italian pizza place. I had this manager named Max. It was closing time, and me and Max locked up the restaurant. I went home. I took this sort of shortcut, but I heard this voice. It sounded like Max's voice. I called his name, but nothing. I went to work the next day, and I asked Max, "Why did you say my name last night?" And Max was really confused. He said he didn't. I said, "I heard your voice." He said, "Bro, I was at home." He then said my face went white. So I heard his voice again when I was walking home. I thought this was a prank, but I heard and screamed, and I just ran home. Story 4. This is a story according to my mother's experience when she was a teenager living in a remote village in one of the islands in the Philippines. This happened in the 70s. My mother told me when she first got into high school, she had a seatmate who shares the same name as her. Other than their names, my mother recalled they also shared the same interest with music and arts. They instantly clicked and became friends. One day, my mother's friends skipped school without notifying their teachers. It was a small village, and most people already knew where each family lives. My mother was being a good friend, thought to visit her friend's house after school to check up on her. Before she got to her friend's house, which is located along the riverbank, several of her classmates stopped her on the way, telling her to never go to that house. My mother said, "Why though?" And her classmates said, "Because they eat people." Now, this is not new to my mother. She knew about these rumors at the village, but she never believed these types of accusations. She even shared lunches with her friend. The food they shared didn't taste weird. Her friend acts like every other normal person, so she treats her like anybody else. My mother went ahead, despite the warnings of her classmates. Now keep in mind that it all happened around 4 or 5 in the afternoon. The sun was still up. It was still bright. It was still bright along the riverbank. My mother wasn't scared at all until from afar she saw a woman crouching at the riverbed, shallow part of the river. She initially thought the woman was washing clothes or maybe peeing at the river. The woman had a long, frizzy white hair and appears to be wearing a long black dress with its hem already wet by the river water. My mother kept walking, but when she came close to the woman, she heard this woman was talking to herself. The woman was covering her face in palms, whispering, "I hope the sun sets soon. I hope the sun sets soon," over and over. This scared the shit out of my mother. She began sprinting to my grandparents' home. Back home, she thought the woman she saw could have been a person with mental illness, and she tried to forget about it and just slept. My mother lives in the Nipa hut. Their source of light was only a candle lamp, and they did not have a mattress. They sleep on the bamboo floors with several cracks on it. At 12 midnight, as my mother thought, she felt movements under the floorboards. She was laying with her back on the floor, but she could feel something or someone crawling underneath. That when on her peripheral, she saw long bony fingers slowly emerging between the floorboards. The fingers were poking in and out of the floorboards, as if it was looking for something to feel. It went away for a bit, and my mother thought it was gone, until my mother felt the fingers now poking on her back. Then it felt like the fingers were digging into her skin and pinching her. It was so painful she could not breathe. She couldn't even make a sound because she was so scared. All she can do is endure the pain and cry slightly. That's when the house cat, the hero of the story, bolted outside, knocking down their candle lamp, waking my grandparents. My grandfather hunter took a bolo machete and chased the house cat outside as it appears to be fighting something. That's when my grandmother saw this big black bird trying to get away from the claws of the cat, as it turned into a freaking wild boar before fleeing. My grandfather, even in shock, shouted, "Don't ever come back here or I will hunt you all." My grandfather guarded the whole house, making rounds all throughout the night until sunrise. My mother never saw her friend again. Story 5. I work for campus security at a public university that is over 150 years old. While a lot of universities has gone through renovations and construction through the time period, there is still a good portion of the campus from the latter half of the 19th century and the turn of the 20th century. As a hobby and a student of history, I love studying architecture and the history of the city, as well as the campus. So when I was posted on the campus health clinic, I naturally had to look up the history of the building. While I could not find a definitive date for the building I was working at, I had learned that the original health center on campus had been built to treat patients from the Spanish flu epidemic in 1918. However, by going off the dates of surrounding buildings, which had some have been built in the 1920s, I found this to be plausible and consistent with the building I was working in. However, as any casual observer can notice, the building has gone through numerous renovations over the past few decades, if not a century. The last Friday I had been assigned to lock up this building. I had previously only worked there a handful of times, but I always got a weird feeling. Naturally, by the time I go to close up, the sun is already getting to set and the lights are turned off for the building. So I grabbed my flashlight, started at the 5th floor, and worked my way down. The 5th floor is nothing out of the ordinary, except it's abandoned. There are extra wide doors to all the rooms, and they're already locked by the time I get there, and it's obviously been renovated within the last 20 years. It just has some kind of ominous feeling about it I can explain. However, when I go to the 4th floor, they house the dental clinic. The sun had already been beginning to set. All I had to do was go through the various wings and make sure that the doors are all locked for the night. As I'm going down the hallway with the dental chairs, I could have sworn I saw someone sitting in one of the chairs. I had been walking by quickly, but I am convinced I saw the distinct gray outline of a person sitting in the chair. However, when the way the chairs are turned away from the alcove in which they are situated, I had decided to check the rest of the floor before going back in the room. While it is possible someone could have stayed after hours, there were no way someone could have entered if they didn't have a reason or an ID card to be there. Anyways, the entire health center closes at 5 and everyone is out of the building except me and a handful of custodians. I turned on my flashlight and entered the room. I shined the flashlight to where I had thought I saw someone sitting in a chair and walked to the side to see, but there was nobody there. Just at that moment, the radio turned on by itself. Up until that moment, there had been no sound but my footsteps. I stepped out of the room and shined my flashlight down the hall and called out to see if anyone was playing a joke on me. However, when I stepped into the hallway, there was just the light of the flashlight and the sound of my voice echoing down the dark hallway. Except the music that was playing in the room, it started to get increasingly louder. I had made sure that I didn't touch anything when I entered the room and could not figure out how. Not only the radio turned on by itself, but it seemed to be playing in a deafening volume. I regained my composure and stepped back into the room, only for the music to abruptly stop. 9:38 p.m. Don't know what I saw or what happened that night, but I'll never forget that night. When I go back to the office at the end of my shift, I asked the night shift, as they were punching in, if they thought that the health center was haunted. One guy laughed, but the rest seemed to chime in with their belief that it was in fact haunted. I don't know if I'm brave or scared, but I'll be back next week if anything happens out of the unusual. Story 6. This happened when I was 17. My youth group was ending for the night, and my friend, who was a film student at the arts high school I went, needed to use the back of the church to film something for her class. The pastor's wife, who was in charge of the youth group at the time, agreed to let us film. Now, just for some context, the church I was going to at the time was an old school Baptist church built in the early 1900s, around 115 years old. So there's a lot of parts in the building, especially in the back part of the sanctuary, which was where we were filming, that didn't get used a lot anymore, mainly for storage space. We went through the back of the sanctuary and through the back door behind the pulpit, which led to the area behind the baptismal. The best way to describe it, it would be a very narrow hallway with wood panels all around it. We set up the camera and the light and started to film. After a few takes, me and my friend switched so we could get 2 actors saying the lines. I also started recording on my phone. While saying the lines, my friend improvised and decided to knock 3 times on the wall to add effect. I busted his balls for it because it wasn't in the script and we had to redo the shot. But as we were getting ready to do, all of a sudden we heard those same 3 knocks, and it didn't come from anyone, including my friend. We all stood silent, listening. I told my friend he was just hearing the pipes, except it happened again, and instead of knocking, like it was previously, we heard tapping. We stood there listening, but got so freaked out that we couldn't stay there anymore and left. On the way home, my friend took a look at the photos and videos, and as he was looking, he saw something weird go across the corner of the hallway. You want to know what it was? An orb. Then, as the other knocking and tapping place, more orbs. Whether or not you believe this story, this is what happened. It definitely wasn't one of us doing that knocking. Story 7. So, I absolutely want to believe in hauntings and ghosts and spirits and all that paranormal stuff. But I've never really had a definite, yep, that actually happened, proof, until this one night at the old cinema I used to work at. A lot of coworkers have reported creepy feelings, being followed or not alone, weird footsteps, even something flying off the walls. I'm not a believer in this particular story, but everything else I'd experienced myself. This space was huge and old and had a lot of weird quirks, which I usually attributed all the strange things to in one way or another. But there are a couple of things that to this day I still can't shake. So one night, a coworker and I were alone closing the cinema. We were good friends and both into woohoo and occult stuff. And As we were a bit hectic and negative at the time, we decided the space needed an energetic cleanse. So we brought some candles and some sage and shut off the lights and walked onto the stage in front of the main screen. My friend lit the candle and the sage and started calling out to various spirit energies. Archangel Michael, I think, stuff like that. So cleanse the space and bring it in a better energy. We stood up to start our walk through the building and hear the familiar sound of the door on the opposite side of the room closing. We both look at each other. Then the door, it's opened. We ask if she heard it, and she says yes. But we shrugged it off and kept going with the smudging. Undeterred, we started walking through the screen and onward into the rest of the building. As we're leaving the screening room, we go through the doors we both distinctively heard shut and head to the second screen in the basement. It's absolutely pitch dark, save the candle and my phone torch. We walk down the concrete steps, through the corridor and into the pitch black screen. My friend begins her spiel again, and we once again distinctly hear the door at the top of the stairs close. As we rush back up, again, it's opened. We're both freaked out at this time, me a lot more so than my friend. So she convinced me to push on upstairs. Absolutely worst bits of the building. As we get to the first landing, we hear the door to the front of the cinema open. It's a really distinct sound of a push bar door. A door we definitely locked with chains not 30 minutes earlier. We look back down into the cafe area and can't see anyone. I'm freaked out at this point, yelling, "Is somebody there?" No reply. And after a quick sweep of the ground floor, we don't see anyone. So we keep going. We go through another push bar door to head upstairs, the creepiest part of the building, the projection room, and even further up into the boiler room. We climb the concrete stairs and round the corner to the projection room. We both jump as, again, the distinct sound of a door opening and closing behind us is clearly heard from the stairwell we just walked up. Then a very distinct footsteps. We rush out of the projection onto the landing. Nothing. We keep going. I really have no idea how my friend had guts for this, as I was freaking the fuck out. But she persists smudging and calling to whoever and carrying on. I beg to go back, but she says we have to go further upstairs to the boiler room. Now this part of the cinema is an absolute creepiest bit. Decrepit and weird and smelling. It's just always given me the absolute creeps, even during the day. So needless to say, I am terrified. We walk up the stairs slowly, smudging, my friend calling out protective spirits. As we slowly creep down the dark hallway towards the hideous boiler room, we clearly hear footsteps behind us, heading quickly up the concrete stairs. At this point, we both say, "Nope," and rush downstairs as quickly as possible. I have never flown so quickly down 3 flights of stairs in my life. We put out the smudge stick, alarm the building, and run out there as quickly as possible. We both were convinced we'd heard what we heard, and I stayed over the night with her, too creeped out to be alone. Edit. So my boyfriend reminded me of another strange thing that happened to him one morning when he was opening the place. It was clearly probably 9 a.m., and my boyfriend was the manager set to open that day. He starts taking chains off the fire doors and walks into the main screen to unlock the fire exit at the front of the auditorium. As he turns around to the empty auditorium, he clearly sees who he thinks is a coworker standing in the upper balcony staring at him. He calls out to him, saying he didn't know anyone was in, and heads out of the screen. As he starts heading to meet his coworker, it dawns on him there was no way it could be this person, as he had to lift the metal shutters on the doors to open the cinema, which can't be closed from the inside. He runs upstairs assuming someone had made their way inside. When he gets to the balcony, it's empty. Nobody anywhere to be seen. He goes to all the doors, and they're still chained. And the alarm was never set off in the night. At this point, he barricades himself in the office until another coworker arrives, who freaked out to move. I'm the first person to find excuses and explanations for everything paranormal I've ever experienced. But these two things, I really can't explain. Whether you believe me or not, I hope you get a kick out of this, but it's giving me the creeps just remembering it. This is the last story. I hope you enjoyed this collection. Thank you so much. Remember, it's scary out there. Hi everyone, it's Curious Raven. Today is Creepypasta Saturday, and I have a story for y'all here. It is written by Last Ad 1437. It's called Project X. I had always loved being a radio host. It was my passion, my dream, my escape from the mundane reality of life. I didn't mind the long hours, the modest pay, or the isolation. Connecting with the listeners, playing their favorite songs, and sharing my thoughts on various topics brought me joy, even though I'd never met any of them in person. But everything changed on one fateful night when an unexpected call disrupted my world. It was nearing midnight, and I was in the midst of my late night show. However, having just finished playing a classic rock tune, I was about to introduce the next song when the phone rang. I picked it up and greeted the caller with my usual charm. "Hello, you're on the air with DJ Mike. Who's calling and where are you tuning in from?" A momentary silence hung in the air. Then a voice broke it, a deep, raspy voice tinged with urgency and fear. "Hello, Mike. I'm sorry for interrupting your show, but I need to talk to you. It's crucial." "Of course, go ahead. What's on your mind?" "I know the truth about Project X." A shiver ran down my spine. Project X had long been dismissed as a conspiracy theory, but the way this caller spoke made me question my skepticism. "What do you mean? What is Project X?" "I can't reveal everything now. It's too risky. They might be listening. But you need to know this. You're in danger, Mike. You're a part of Project X." "What? How? What are you talking about?" "Your radio station isn't what it seems. It's no ordinary station. It's a transmitter for Project X. They use it to broadcast signals to the surrounding area, and you're their unwitting subject, Mike. They've been experimenting on you for months." My disbelief and anger surged. This had to be a sick joke. "That's absurd. Impossible. Who are you, and how do you know all this?" "I was one of them, Mike. Or at least I used to be. I worked on Project X, but I couldn't bear it any longer. I couldn't stand what they were doing to you and others. So I decided to expose them and warn you." "Why me? Why are they doing this?" "They have different goals, Mike. Some want to create a new world order, some seek a war, some play God. But they all share one thing. They don't care about human lives. They don't care about you, Mike. You're just a test subject to them, a disposable tool." My stomach churned. I wanted to end the nightmare, but something inside urged me to listen further. "What should I do? How can I escape?" You can't face them alone, Mike. But you can save yourself. You need to leave the station immediately. Why? What's going to happen? They initiated the countdown, Mike. In 10 minutes, they'll activate Project X. Activate? What will it do? I don't know precisely, Mike, but I'm sure it won't be good for anyone who hears it. Then let's go. We need to get out of here. I dropped the phone and raced to the door, but it was locked, resisting my efforts. Frantically, I searched for another exit, but none presented itself. I was trapped within the station walls, with Project X's ominous voice echoing in my mind. Panic set in as the seconds ticked away. I tried to reach out to the mysterious caller, but the line had gone dead. The countdown continued and my heart raced. Suddenly, a chilling thought struck me. What if the caller had been right all along? What if Project X wasn't just a wild conspiracy theory? The pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place. The strange occurrences I had noticed, the mysterious technical glitches during broadcast, and the unusual experiments conducted at the station all seemed to connect to Project X. Desperation fueled my determination to escape. I rushed to the control room, hoping to find a way to override the broadcast, but the controls were locked behind a security code. I frantically searched for clues, and then it hit me. The caller had been part of the project. Maybe he knew the code. I dialed the number again, praying for a response. After several agonizing seconds, the raspy voice returned. Mike, you don't have much time. I can't help you stop Project X, but you have to trust me. I hesitated for a moment, then replied, Okay, tell me what I need to do. The caller guided me through a series of intricate steps to bypass the security code. With trembling hands, I followed his instructions, my every move synchronized with the ticking countdown. Finally, I heard a soft click. The controls were unlocked. I quickly disabled the broadcast, ending the countdown just moments before the fateful activation. A wave of relief washed over me as a silence descended upon the station. I was safe, for now. But the caller's voice returned, filled with urgency once more. Mike, you stopped it this time. They won't give up. You're a threat to them now. You need to disappear, go off the grid. They'll come after you. I knew he was right. My life, as I knew it, was over. I had to leave everything behind, the radio station, my home, my identity. As I hung up the phone, I realized that my passion for radio had unwittingly thrust me into a world of secrets and danger. I was no longer just a DJ. I was a target, a survivor, a guardian of the truth about Project X. With the weight of the unknown on my shoulders, I vanished into the night, determined to uncover the secrets hidden within the airwaves and protect the world from the sinister forces that lurked behind the radio waves. I really liked that story. It was interesting and kept you on your toes, I guess. I can't think of the word right now. I'm half asleep, half awake, sort of. I'm drinking my coffee, trying to wake up. I will see y'all this coming up week, I guess on Tuesday. And I hope y'all have a lovely rest of your weekend. I love y'all so much. And remember, it's scary out there. Like and subscribe. Number 1. While vacationing in Florida back in 2018, I crossed from the west side to the east side of Florida to get to Route 1 to the Keys. I stopped at a gas station on the west to the east road and got gas. A young guy filled me up, about 12 or 13. I asked him if his dad owned the station and he said no, the res. I realized I was on a reservation. I had to pee, so after gassing up, I parked my car and headed towards the ladies' restroom. It was on the side. I saw a lady go in, about 10 or 15 feet in front of me. I stood outside and waited. Another lady came up a few minutes later and asked me if someone was in there. I said yes. We waited a few more minutes and the lady said, "She's been in there for a long time. Are you sure someone is in there?" I said yes. I saw her go in. I knocked on the door and nothing happened, so I turned the knob and it was locked. The lady left to go get the key. The lady came out and unlocked the door. I knocked again and nothing happened, so I opened the door. The room was empty and only had a small window, very high up. I was confused and felt around the walls, wondering if she fell through like on the Twilight Zone. I washed my hands and left, and the lady didn't say anything and went in. But you guys, I saw that lady go in that restroom on the res. I saw her. Number 2. Randomly, almost every year or every couple years, my dog in the middle of the night will wake up and push herself up against as if she's trying to get away from something. She always looks in different directions each time. Sometimes it looks like she's following its movements. Either way, she shakes, presses up against me. I throw covers over her, but it doesn't help her. I will say some variation of "stop fucking with my dog or I will fuck you up. Don't fucking push it." And even with covers over her, eyes covered, she relaxes and I will go back to sleep like nothing happened. Last night or morning, since it happened around the exact same time, 4:33 a.m., she randomly woke up and began doing the same thing as described above. But this time she was looking at something at the wall above my head. She would look bottom left for her, bottom right for me, track something towards the middle of the wall, up towards the ceiling, towards another wall, and near my couch. I tried the blanket thing again, but I could see her head moving as if she could still see whatever it was. Last night I said, "Do you really have nothing better to do than pick on my dog? As if you can't pick on me? Aren't you ashamed of yourself?" "Probably not, that's why you're dead, fucking asshole." My dog still hadn't calmed down. My room is dark, just like my soul. I love it that way. Only light is from when I have my TV, tablet, or phone on. So shadows being visible on my dark painted walls and dark room are impossible. Since I love the dark, I can make out everything in my room, and so if a shadow was visible for me, I'd see it. I can see when there's a mosquito in my room, so I'm positive I'd be able to see a shadow. It took 10 minutes before my dog calmed down and went back to sleep. 30 minutes later, she woke up and just kept staring at a whole different corner of my room. So I stay awake, shit-talking whatever was around. Now, today, my dog is knocked out and sleeping peacefully like nothing happened last night or morning. Funny thing is, I've always heard things in the house, more towards me during the day and night. I've always sensed and seen things more in my room than anywhere else. So, I'm irked that it's choosing to bully my dog. That's all. Just thought I'd write it all down, because I'm awake and it was around the same time. Number 3. When I was 11 years old, my dad took me and my brother to a party. He apparently knew the people, but me and my brother didn't. They had just moved into this house, and this was what the party was for. After about an hour, a man came up to me and a group of kids asking us to go to his house to grab some more firewood because we were running out. Us all being trusting kids all said okay and ran to have fun. I remember feeling uneasy, but I pushed the feeling aside and kept moving onward until I reached the house. Each person grabbed 2 pieces of wood, but I only grabbed one because I felt that I was too small to carry 2 pieces. Everyone got mad at me and said it was only fair, so I went back for another piece. I made them pinky promise not to leave me, but when I came back out, they were all gone. Realizing I was alone, I started to panic because I didn't know my way back. I had never been here before. I started to scope out the area thinking someone had to stay behind with me, but no one was there. I was about to give up, aimlessly walking around looking for the way home when suddenly I saw a girl standing by the front door. She had big curly red hair, big blue eyes, red little freckles, and a white nightgown. She wore nothing on her feet. She looked like one of those girls in the group, so I called out to her. But she just stood silently, staring off blankly. The more I stared at her, the more her body seemed to fall apart. Her hair seemed missing in certain areas. She was skin and bones thin, and had twigs and leaves in her hair, and her skin was pale and soaked. I feared she was getting too cold, so I shouted to her over and over again. She ignored me. Finally, I took a step towards her, and she smiled. Her eyes went jet black and empty. She turned around and ran inside laughing. I followed her and searched the whole house for half an hour. When I came back out, everyone had came back for me, asking where I was. I was panicked, told them about this injured girl that needed help, but they just looked at me confused. They assured me that there was no girl before laughing at me like I was bonkers. I kept telling them about it, and they were just as confused as I was. We went back to the party and acted like nothing happened, but I had this bad feeling. So I went to the mom and the party and told her the whole story, and she asked me about the man that sent us for wood because he never needed more in the first place. I gave her a description, and she said that man had never been to the party. She didn't know who I was talking about. She gathered all of us, who told the same story about this same man, and she said she didn't know who he was. But she was drunk and didn't seem too worried, so she just told us to be safe. Number 4. Sorry for the bad writing. It's night, and I'm seriously spooked. My mom had a best friend roommate who died from cancer when she was staying with us. His brother gave him a red ukulele with inspirational quotes written on it, and there was another blue ukulele that belonged to my younger brother. We only played the blue one and never played the red one. My mom and my younger brother moved away, so we were going to ship my brother's belongings through the mail. Someone mislabeled the boxes and we never got around shipping them. It took my brother's room, and I was clearing away the boxes when I remembered the ukuleles. I took both of them out and put them on the shelf. A few nights later, I got woken up by the red one strumming itself. It was one singular strum, and it was still relatively in tune, unlike the blue one, which was completely out of tune. I ignored it and went back to sleep. I did this a few more times. I was learning how to play the blue one, so I just left it next to me on the couch usually. One day when my sister and brother, my dad, were at work, it was next to me as usual. A singular strum came from the ukulele. I was completely alone. I looked around expecting to see a big bug or something that bumped the ukulele, but there was nothing. It kept on doing this, and I was pretty spooked. I started leaving it on the shelf of the coffee table, and it kept on doing this. We have many instruments in the house, and these ukuleles are the only ones that do this. I decided to stare at it, and it kept silent. I leave the room, and what do I hear? One singular strum. They only started doing this when my brother left, and they are sentimental, so I can't get rid of them. I've used other ukuleles, and they don't do this. The red one tunes itself when it strums. I have the other one tuned for left-handed playing. It keeps on switching and nobody else plays it. And yes, I do have working carbon monoxide detectors. It might just be stress making me imagine it. But why just the ukuleles? And how do they tune themselves? I need a logical explanation for this. Number 5. A week ago, I was talking to a friend through WhatsApp, sending voicemails. I was talking about a weird feeling of someone in my house. My friend didn't believe me. I have had that feeling since I was a little kid. I was fine with that, and we took it as a joke until one of my audios. While I was talking, another voice could be heard over mine. It was like, ha, as if someone was in front of the phone speaker. I thought I said it. I never speak with my face that close to the phone. I didn't know about this until my friend heard the audio and asked me if I was alone. I was walking the dog. It was late at night and no one was outside. I listened to the audio and freaked out. It is clearly there. Since then, I have been trying to think of a reasonable explanation and couldn't guess what it was. Has anyone else experienced something like this before? Number 6. As a kid, I have always been fascinated by ghost stories, paranormal thrillers, and spooky experiences from family and friends. I used to sometimes wonder what it would be like to encounter a real ghost or something spooky. This is a real life incident that happened when I was about 10 to 11 years old. I was back in the city, Bombay, where I had gone to visit my aunt. My dad picked me up railway station in Bangalore. It was about 10 p.m. and raining heavily. We waited for the rain to subside and started to head home on our old scooter. Dad casually checking with me about my vacation, and all of a sudden the scooter stopped. Dad got off the scooter and tried kick-starting it, but to no avail. I stood there with my backpack partially drenched and hungry. I looked around while my dad was trying his best to revive the engine and to get it running. The engine had probably water inside it due to the rain. The whole locality wore a creepy and eerie look, with not a soul to be seen far and wide along the roads. Much later in the observation, I saw that this was the road flanked by cemeteries on each side. A chill ran down my spine as much as I was anticipating such a day. I was not prepared to have any kind of encounter. I quietly tugged my dad's shirt and helped him push the vehicle along the road until we find some help. Remember, it's pitch dark, raining, and no one in sight. We pushed along to the end of the road and arrived at what seemed like a junction with a long, wide road ahead of us. We stopped to catch our breath and decided to wait it out. We had crossed the cemetery patch by now. I was mentally preparing to encounter ghosts and act all brave and bold in the eventuality. Suddenly, my crazy thoughts were interrupted by a young man on a scooter who stopped in front of us, asked if we needed help. Couldn't recollect where he'd come from. The road was empty and there was no way I could have missed a single scooter approaching us. He was very friendly. He unclogged the silencer and kick-started the scooter, and the engine was resuscitated back to life with just a single kick. I was amazed. The young man's face was not very clear, mostly because it was dimly lit junction. My father offered him some money as a token of gratitude, and he simply smiled and said, "No, thank you. Just get home safe with your kid." He ruffled my hair and smiled at me. Dad helped me pick up my backpack, and we sat on the scooter, and barely that second, the man who helped us was nowhere to be seen. It was bizarre, as if this is a 100-foot road, so long and wide, and with no turns or crossroads. There's no way this man could have flown 140 miles per hour in a scooter to the end of the road. Dad gasped in surprise, and I was fixated on the road to see nobody. It was as if he had vanished into thin air. My dad could see that I was overshadowed by fear. I could tell that he was terrified too. We left the spot swiftly and continued our journey home without a word. Both of us were baffled and confused at the encounter. Was it a friendly ghost who came to help us? Or a good Samaritan with impeccable MotoGP skills on a 50cc scooter? Till today, these questions haunt us. Neither logic nor science could explain his disappearance that night. Number 7. Haven't used Reddit in a while, mainly use Twitter nowadays for my social media urges, but I didn't really know where else to put this, so I'm making a return. Last night I got a call from a military buddy who was looking for a ride home from the bar and didn't want to spend $30 on an Uber ride. I said sure. I was hungover myself and figured it would help to drive with the windows down and get some air. It was probably 12:30 a.m., and I was driving around my neighborhood trying to take an alternate route that I hadn't taken before but knew about. Basically one that went through residential areas and stayed off the bigger, more populated routes. I didn't really want to fight traffic that entire way getting downtown. So, as I'm driving, everything was normal. I was listening to some random podcast about World War II, but then as I'm passing this one random house, a couple streets down from mine, there's a kid standing in the front yard, right on the edge of the road. To be honest, this doesn't sound that weird. Looking back, it was past midnight, and this kid was maybe 10 to 11 years old. He had on a red shirt, tan shorts, and sneakers with a blonde bowl cut. Totally normal looking kid. So as I'm coming up to this kid, I get to speed bump and slow down so I was able to get a better look at him. He wasn't playing. He wasn't running around. No other kids were with him. He was just standing completely still and meeting my gaze as I'm going past. Like the entire way down the street, he doesn't stop staring. And after I passed him, I kept looking at my rearview mirror and he still didn't stop looking. He doesn't cross the street or go back to playing around, standing there staring at my truck. On the drive back, I told my friend after picking him up about the kid, and he was interested, so I took him back through the same way where I saw the kid. This time he wasn't there. Fast forward to when me and my friend back to the place, sitting in my living room, shooting the shit, watching YouTube, and we hear this super fast, quiet knocking at the door. Like so quiet, my AC almost completely smothered the sound. It's like 1:30 a.m. at this point. Both my roommates are out of town for the long weekend, so I was kind of wary of answering the door. I peek out the window next to the front door, and there's no one there. Honestly, this could have just been a tree limb hitting the roof near the front door. In that moment, it was like I was having a heart attack, thinking I'd see the kid there. Later, while I was in bed, just laying there, I heard a few more random knocks in different places. My bedroom is right next to the front door and goes out onto the patio that the front door connects to. These knocks could have been at the front door or just in some random spot in the house. At this point, I was so tired, I really didn't care to worry about it and passed out. Waking up this morning thinking about it, those knocks creeped me out a bit. I know this really isn't the most bone-chilling story. It kind of goes to show how kids can be so creepy with zero effort. Edit. I posted a snap video of the knocking that I'm hearing on my phone, and I'm still hearing it a few days later. That was the end of this collection of stories. I hope y'all enjoyed them. The whole kid thing kind of really creeped me out. I love y'all so much. I will be back probably Thursday with some more paranormal stories. Please have a good rest of your week, and I'll see you soon. And remember, it's scary out there. Number 1. I was at a loss with what to do with my life after getting out of the Marines. I took quite a bit of time off being a responsible adult in an attempt to decompress from 6 years of intense structure. Shortly thereafter, I realized I couldn't function properly without that structure. Just like that, Facebook targeted me with a life advertisement, like it read my thoughts. My small town city police department is looking for a full-time patrol officer. It makes sense. It's the closest I will ever get to the fulfillment of serving one's country, serving my community instead. Being a cop would give me the structure and order I needed. I could even help people on a more personal level, more than I have ever felt I did as a Marine. It just made sense. So that's what I did. Interviews, background checks, drug tests in the academy, and then I was in. Sort of. I may have been a sergeant of Marines with a few medals to display in an oak shadow box, but now I'm just a rookie. As such, I have to ride with the field training officer. I may have graduated the academy, but that's only the basics. Boot camp, so to speak. Now I'm partnered with a veteran cop of 15 plus years on the force. Officer, I'll call him D, for privacy, was easily respected, firm but fair, by the book, and seemed to know everything about anything. I couldn't have found a better training officer. He recognized what I had done in life up to until that point and respected me for it, treated me like an adult. I couldn't have asked for more. So the months went by. We responded to car accidents, domestic calls, disputes of all kinds, and even a few funny IMO calls, like a lady hitting her husband over the head with a ladle because he said her chili was bad. A story for another time, perhaps. We worked the night shift, less chaotic, for a new guy, I suppose. Part of our duties was checking up on the local government buildings throughout the night. I may have mentioned it was a smaller town, but we had recently had a new courthouse and jail built. The old courthouse was repurposed into a lot of smaller offices: DMV, water board, county clerk, register of property deeds, etc. The attached old jail was the most part simply abandoned. The old jail is connected to the old courthouse by a third-story sky bridge. I guess the idea was, if you were sentenced to jail time, they could just march you right on over to the jail. It was a quiet night on one particular shift, so Officer D suggests we should knock out our nightly checks before things inevitably get not so quiet. It's about midnight, so we cruise over to the old courthouse to get started. We pull right up to the main entrance and get out and approach the doors, like I've done for months already. Just a quick tug to make sure it's secure, but the door swings open. From the cruiser, I hear the straight-laced Officer D simply state, "Fuck." The eloquent response is, "Why fuck? See the courthouse old or new, it's the sheriff's department domain. When it's found unlocked in the middle of the night, it means getting the sheriff out of bed." So that's what we did. And Sheriff J did not disappoint. This man showed up wearing pajama pants and a gun. He called a few sheriff deputies in the area to assist because we now have to go inside this large 3-story building and search the entire thing to ensure no one had wandered in. Eerie does not even begin to describe it. You know what I mean if you've been inside a mall or a school well beyond after hours. A place normally bustling with activity, being so still and so quiet is disconcerting. But nevertheless, we had a job to do. So myself, Officer D, 2 sheriff deputies, and our pajama-clad sheriff began to sweep the first floor of the building. One thing I did notice is the place had these motion activity hallway lights clicked on one by one as you progress further in. Other than that little observation, it was routine. On the second floor, more offices. Some I knew, some I didn't. No sign of anyone or anything out of place. We've more or less split up at this point to cover more ground a little quicker. It's clear that Sheriff J would like to go back to sleep. I turn a corner and I'm met with a long, dark hallway. No offices, doors in sight, just a single door at the end with a sign identifying it as a stairwell. On the right side of the hall were many large windows overlooking the parking lot. I begin the trek to the stairwell, glancing out the windows down at our cruisers, then up to the 3rd floor. I'd met with the same hallway as the floor below, windows now on the left as I move towards the main hall. This is where all the old courtrooms are. Going into the first courtroom, I was met with a once majestic and dignified room reduced to an oversized and disorganized filing cabinet. manila folders stacking high as far as I could see. It was a hoarder's dream and a downright perilous to walk through. I want to check out the old sky bridge, but it was sealed up tight. Oh well, I searched the room as best as I can and find nothing. So I stumble out of that life-size game of bureaucratic Jenga and move on. But it looks like the other guys already finished up at the two other courtrooms and were waiting for me. We came up empty-handed, and that was the best-case scenario. So we head back downstairs to the first floor and leave out the main entrance. Sheriff J securing the doors behind us. We congregate by the cruisers, and we're swapping stories about what each of us saw. It's not every day you get to explore an old courthouse at night, after all. The minutes tick by, and the building has long since gone dark again, the lights turning off with a lack of motion to activate them, until one did, on the third floor, and then another, in succession, as if someone was walking the hallways, as I just had, not even 15 minutes before. 5 law enforcement officers stood stock till watching this happened until the entire hall was illuminated once more. Then, as the last light activated, a dark figure peered around the edge of the window and then leaned back out of sight. A moment of hesitation for everyone present before Sheriff J charged the door, jamming the key in and wiping the door open. The sheriff and his deputies run to the left staircase while Officer D and I just burst into the right stairwell. We rushed to the third floor, and both groups stood at each end of the main hall for a moment. Unspoken communication. We had just ran down the side hall where this person thing just was. It was a lot colder than before. I stayed at the L intersection on my side while a deputy stayed at the L intersection at the opposite end. These are the only 2 staircases in the building, no elevators either. So we have this person cornered. Sheriff J, Officer D, and the other deputy then meticulously started clearing the courtrooms again. I stayed at my intersection, constantly looking between the younger deputy across from me and the hallway that already began to go dark again. It was a tense 20 minutes that I felt like days, but the 3 senior cops come out as the last courtroom looking baffled. Sheriff J, now looking more than awake, signaled our departure. We once again left the building, locking it behind us. There wasn't much talking like that before, but each one of us took one last long look at the hallway before leaving. Number 2. This story is not mine, but my mom's best friend's. It's 1800 in Ireland. There was an Englishman who would shoot any Irish man who would go on their land. They hated Irish people. He had a daughter who fell in love with the Irishman. The father found out and chained his daughter down and locked her up in her room. She died many years later. The present day, there was a hotel in the land. It was a 5-star hotel, but there was always a complaint from a certain room about hearing chains rattling, a woman screaming, and the radiator not working. The manager thought it was fake and took the night in the room. After the night, the man was so traumatized, the room was boarded up and painted over. If you go to the hotel, you will see the boards of wood over the painted door. Number 3. My parents and some family members decided to stop at the California Nevada Hotel for a couple nights. Everyone went to their rooms. They got rooms next door to one another. My dad said he wanted to watch TV and didn't want to do the tour they were told about. While everyone was gone and he was relaxing, he felt the headboard rattle on his back. He assumed the person next to the door had banged on the wall. He ignored it and flipped through the channels. After a few minutes, it happened again. Only this time he felt like the board had been pushed, which caused him to be pushed from the headboard. He got up, banged on the wall, and told the person to stop. After a few minutes, it happened again. So he put his shoes on, walked over to confront the asshole, as he put it. When he walked outside, he realized there was no one there. They were the corner room. No one can be banging on the wall. He decided to go down to the lobby and wait for my mom to come back. When the tour ended, they saw my dad in the lobby and asked what he was doing. He told them everything, and my aunt goes, "We just found out it's haunted." It was such an amazing tour. My dad demanded they find somewhere else to stay because there's no way he's going to continue to stay there. They ended up staying just the night, but my dad says he didn't sleep. Number 4. One of the most often asked questions I receive about the Bell House is, what was my scariest moment? What was the most horrific event? The answer I usually give is the incidents where my poster caught fire. But in truth, it is hard to answer questions like that because there were so many things that happened that terrified me and Tina. Considering all the different variables that go into a poltergeist haunting, it is hard to qualify which event is number 1. The poster incident reigned supreme for the simple fact it involved fire. It involved locking me inside my house. A case of paranormal, false imprisonment, if you will. Include the electric interface I had to deal with while on the phone with the 911 operator. And if you start to understand why I list it as number 1, the list of the most horrific activity of the Bell House is endless. It varies. But what I can tell you is that many activities I experienced while living in the Bell House have been overlooked and ignored. The 3 burning Bibles, wall writings, or appearance of ghost adventures, and all the revealed things during the episode I have taken center stage. That's unfortunate. Before I share this story, I need to paint a picture of where I was in my relationship with Tina and talk about the darkness I was living in. The relationship in all senses and purposes was over. Tina and I, essentially roommates. By roommates, I mean share a roof, not a bed. January 2015. Neither one of us wants to call it quits. Neither one of us wants to be the first to say goodbye. We are not even making eye contact anymore. Those pillow talks we had before we fell asleep, gone. Dinner together, no more. Joint social outings, gone. The kisses we gave each other before leaving for work or arriving home have stopped. As depressing and sad as it was internally for me, it was also a moment where I was furious. I'm angry at Tina. I felt she abandoned me. She abandoned the united front we had. Tina refused to understand that the female jewelry she was finding and sex with other women innuendos were the product of the poltergeist, not me. The spirits in the house knew this. They were successful in separating us romantically, emotionally, spiritually, socially, and physically. The only chance Tina and I had of beating this was to remain united. The idea of me cheating on her created a wedge between us. Metaphorically, the wedge put me on an island by myself. I was now easy pickings. Now the poltergeist can focus on me, and that is precisely what they did. The die is cast. The darkness. I was attacked from mid-November to late February 2015. Tina and I on occasion would sleep in different bedrooms. That is one example of how our physical relationship was deteriorating. Tina knew the activity had switched to just happening around me and therefore could go about her daily routine. Ironing board and candles encased in glass are hurled at me the second I lie down. making sleeping impossible. Understand there is not a moment for Tina and I in the house when I am not being attacked. There is no such thing as hyperbole when describing what a poltergeist attack is like. When a spirit decides to center all activity in and around you, have entered a dangerous phase. You contemplate suicide as a viable option for ridding yourself of the activity. The world you live in becomes small. Every day I walk through the front door of my house after work, the lights flicker off and on, depending on which room I'm in. The chair I sit in when eating in the dining room, inexplicably relocated to my office, sometimes with a note that reads, Die KL. How did my kitchen chair or bar stool get past the ADT motion sensors? I am sitting in my office trying to have some semblance of an ordinary evening, when suddenly objects, small, medium, or large, come flying in. Imagine a chef knife being thrown at you. Imagine if being thrown at you multiple times. How about a beer bottle? How about a cologne bottle? Candles encased in thick glass resting on a bookshelf are harmless. Those same candles hurled at you in a vicinity at incredible speeds. Very dangerous. Oh, you want to watch TV? Good luck with that. The TV in my office is cut off and on. The channels turn by themselves. The internet, the main tool I use to research my predicament, constantly fails. The Wi-Fi is failing. The computer reboots or locks up constantly. It didn't happen. A horrific morning. I had a rough night. Do you know the game Musical Chairs? How about musical bedrooms? The attack on me had become so frequent while I was trying to sleep that I had to get up and switch bedrooms. That used to buy me and Tina a day or two of no activity. Not anymore. Now it just buys me a few hours. When poltergeists are concerned, you take what you can get. This morning I could not sleep. I was looking up at the ceiling when the lamp to my left suddenly flew across the room. That was my signal to get up, finally. Get the fuck out of the house, Keith, is what my brain was telling me. Tina, bless her heart, had not moved a muscle. The noise did not even make her budge. The time it took to shower and shave, pack my suitcase and my business trip, grab my laptop bag, and touch the front door had to have been less than 30 minutes. I was in a hurry. I'm shaking with fear. I felt evil in the air. I felt the darkness. That moment where the predator is about to snag its prey. That was me. I was the prey. I was being haunted. The feeling of being watched was intense. How intense? You are about to find out. This is something about the feeling of being watched, some instinct embedded in human beings, be it an inner sense, spider sense if you will, or better still, a disturbance in the force. You feel it. When you feel it, you know it's true. You know something's trying to tell you something. One thing I view as a gift and a curse is my ability to sense certain things before they happen. I have always had enhanced intuition. My encounter with these entities seemed to have sharpened it. What is weird, if not scary, is that the entities also know it. I'm talking about my high sense of awareness. The entities are exploiting it, or at times become a victim to it. This intuition, instinct, or whatever you call it, deserves attention. Ignore it at your peril. Not me. Not today. I had made multiple trips from my office to my car. I was loading up my belongings in the trunk of my car when something told me to turn around. Turn around, Keith Linder. Something is looking at you. Something's been watching you ever since you got up. Turn around right now. Look up at your office window. Look up right now. Intuition is giving me orders. Turn around. And I did. I turned away from the trunk of my car and looked up. And guess what I saw? My inner voice was correct. The light in my office was off. It should not be. I just walked out of the room 20 seconds ago. There was no reason that the lights should be off. I was coming back to that room to get some more things. Wait a minute. Someone is in my office. The Venetian blind is pierced open, like someone is peeking through. And that is when it happened. Right before my eyes, I looked up at my office window from my driveway. The Venetian blinds of 2 blades pierced open, slowly closed, or something was peeking through the blinds looking dead at me. The time could not have been more perfect. Deductive reason immediately kicks in at an alarming pace. Who's on the other side of that window? Who's in my office? Oh my God, it's someone in the house with Tina. Tina's asleep. Why is the light in my office off? Something just lowered the blind in my office. Could that be the gray lady? Was this a minion? It must be the spirit that threw the lamp off the dresser a few minutes ago. Why else would it be watching me? I just leapt into my car and drove off. Drive, Keith. The C-track. Your hotel and sleep. Those questions run through my head as I stand outside my driveway. I cannot leave right now. Tina's inside the house. We might not be the best terms right now, but I must save her. So I run back into the house, passing our bedroom. Using my peripheral vision, I see Tina still asleep in the same position, and reach my office thinking Tina's not in the hallway. To the person reading this is going to sound weird. I would have preferred to have caught Tina coming out of the office versus what I'm about to find, which is nothing. I got my office to confirm that the lights were indeed off. I walked out of the office a minute ago. My heart is pitter-pattering. Not because I ran up the stairs at lightning speed. No, I am frightened. I just saw 2 of my Venetian blinds open and close while standing next to my car. An invisible hand between 2 blinds implied someone or something was peeking through my window office, looking down at me from the 2nd floor. From my inside of my office, the most horrific part of this ordeal, and there are many, was when the 2 Venetian blind blades narrowed and closed, implying whoever was looking at me knew I was about to rush back into the house, or they were done looking at me. I left the house 10 minutes later, heading straight to the airport. The message I got from whoever it was behind those Venetian blinds was, "Don't worry, Keith. We'll be here when you get back." Number 5. About 6 years ago, my company had a sales together at the Viking Hotel in Newport. My room was on the 1st floor in the older part of the hotel. As you walk into the room, on the left side was a smaller shower, and on the right side is the toilet. They both have viewing saloon doors on the openings. In the middle of the night, I awoke to something kicking my bed with a foot. It felt very prank-like. I went back to bed, and in the morning, I googled Viking Hotel Haunted and saw there were stories out on the internet. I then looked over at the door, and both the saloon doors were open and blocking the entrance. I guess the hotel was a big party place for the rich during the Roaring '20s. This is one of many weird other worldly experiences I've had. Number 6. Years ago, I lived in a high-rise in Okinawa on property where a bloody battle was fought during World War II. I was up late sewing one evening. I was in the dining room and had the TV on in the background. I got up to switch stations on the TV when I looked down the hallway to where the bedrooms were. At the point in the hallway, I saw the figure of a man. The man was of grayish tones, and he was only visible from his head down to his mid-thigh, where he faded out. He didn't seem to move, but he was looking towards me. I stood there frozen for a few seconds, never taking my eyes off of him, before I quickly looked to the front door to see if it had been opened. The deadbolt on the door was still locked. so I knew the front door had not been opened. When I looked back down the hallway, he was gone. I quickly flipped the hallway light on and ran to check on my children. They were safely alone in their rooms. During those few brief moments this occurred, I felt cold and my stomach was in knots. My heart was racing as I ran through the rest of the apartment to make sure no one had entered. I finally returned to the dining room where I sat and began to analyze what I had just seen. While I knew without a doubt that I had just seen someone, I also kept telling myself that my eyes had played a trick on me because I was tired from being up so late. Prior to this event, I have been one to think about ghosts and spirits, and I certainly didn't believe in them. In the years since, I have thought of this experience many times, and I have never doubted what I saw. Even having experienced this, I still feel conflicted about whether I believe in ghosts. That is the last story of this video. I hope y'all enjoyed. I love y'all so much, and I will see y'all on Thanksgiving. But until then, remember, it's scary out there. This story that I'm reading for you today is by Beeves FTW. It is called I Was Working as a Chauffeur on the Worst Night of My Life. I'm not even supposed to be here today. Dante Hicks' words from the movie Clerks echoed in my head all throughout the night. It was just like an ordinary day, but I was supposed to have the night off. My boss Randy had called me to see if I could work a single job for him. I reluctantly agreed, simply because it would be overtime. I was working at Randy's limousine rentals, and that night was the worst night of my life. The company had seen better days. Randy was flirting with bankruptcy, but he always managed to avoid it. I was just a driver, a chauffeur for those that like technical terms. The pay was decent, and he usually gave me free rein. He kept me around because any time I would drive for people, they would always leave 5-star reviews. I knew the city intimately and could get people to and from any place they desired. I was loyal to Randy because my late wife was his sister. We both had no close family, and I had grown to think of him like a brother. He was basically family, and the only family I had. The sun was beginning to hang low in the sky as I meticulously polished the limo sitting in the parking lot. It was the shortest limousine we had in stock, but I always loved the way it handled. It had a slightly longer wheelbase than a regular sedan, but there was just enough room to make the experience memorable as well as personal. When I'm driving, I like the limo to be spotless. Any spare moment I had was detailing all my rides. The purple and pink sunset reflected off the windshield as I inspected it for any spots or streaks I might have missed. As I wiped away the last noticeable one, a sedan pulled into the parking lot and came to the stop in front of the building. The car grabbed my attention, and I momentarily forgot about the windshield. I watched as the driver's door opened. A man in a two-piece suit stepped out and hurriedly made his way to the back door to open it. Another man stepped out and took a look around. He was wearing an elegant suit and a pair of glasses perched atop his nose. Under the assumption that this would be Brian Wells, my clientele for the evening, I made my way over. The driver of the sedan looked frazzled, like his life was crumbling around him, and there was nothing he could do about it. He was clearly intimidated by the man he drove over. As he continued to hold the door open for the gentleman, I approached with my arm outstretched. I introduced myself. "You must be Mr. Wells. I'm Tom, and I'll be your driver for this evening." Brian extended his hand out to meet mine, and we shook. Couldn't help but notice this man had a rather weak grip. "Why, yes, and you must be the Thomas Fields I have heard so much about. It's a pleasure to meet you. you could please take care of my bags for me. I need to make sure they make it into our ride for the night." Brian turned back to his driver and motioned to the car. "Jared, if you could help Mr. Fields, I can't forget them like I did last time. After that, you are free for the night." Brian turned back to me smiling. "I'll leave the two of you to it. I have to finish some business inside with Randy before we can leave. Make sure the bag and briefcase make it into the trunk." Brian adjusted his tie and headed inside the building. Jared leaned inside the car and pulled the trunk release. He seemed happier now to be out of the presence of Mr. Wells. With the trunk open, I reached inside for the bags. "Do you need a hand? They aren't very heavy, probably just paperwork or something. I think I can manage. So, if there's anything you can tell me about Mr. Brian, you seem a little bit put off by him. He's just a hard-nosed businessman. He likes things the way he likes them. And if you don't agree, you better watch out. He's easy enough to navigate if you keep your head down and don't annoy him. On the bright side, if you impress him, there's a large tip in it for you. That's one of the sole perks in working for him." I chuckled softly and smiled. "I'll keep that in mind. Thanks. Well, I better get this in the trunk. You enjoy the rest of your night, Jared." "No problem. And you do the same. It's been a long day, and I hear a bed calling my name." With Jared walking to the front of the sedan and climbed inside, shutting the door behind him. With the bags in hand, I shut the trunk and gently tapped it twice, indicating he was free to leave. I made my way over to the limo, fumbling in my pockets for the key fob. I pressed the button that popped the trunk and placed the bags inside. I slammed it shut. I turned back around. Jared was pulling out of the parking lot and making his way down the road. I continued watching. The brake light slowly began to grow smaller and smaller in the distance. Night had fully set at this point, and there was an unusual chill in the air. The sky was clear now, and the full moon shone bright in the night sky. The slight wind pierced right through me, making me shiver slightly. I stood there for a moment, gazing at the barren road, feeling goosebumps rise on my flesh. I made my way inside just as Brian walked out. He made his way over to the car in a hurried fashion. I opened the door for him and made sure he got in safely. After closing the door, Randy poked his head out of the building. "Take care of Mr. Wells, Tom. I assured him you are the best we have. Don't prove me wrong." "You got it, boss. It looks pretty dead on the roads anyway. Should be an easy night." I got into the driver's seat, now shivering more violently. My hands were almost frozen as I entered the address into the car's GPS system. The system relayed that there was hardly any traffic on the roads. Shivering, I turned on the heater. It was a cold night, colder than it should be at this time of year. Put the car in gear and slowly pulled out of the parking lot onto the 2-lane, one-way street that would take us downtown. It was a straight shot. "So what brought you in this evening? I'm assuming business and not pleasure?" "A business party with some prospective clients. I could have taken sedan and had Jared drive me, but appearances are everything in this business, and I thought the limo would be a nice touch. All potential clients want to see you're doing well for yourself. When you stop to think about it, though, it really shouldn't matter. But I'm not above a little showing off." "Well, it's like you said, appearances are everything. They just want to be reassured they're making the right decision. It's all about confidence, especially in business. If you can provide with that, it goes a long way." Brian scoffed. "Confidence? Huh. When you've been in this business as long as you have, you learn there is nothing you can be truly confident about. We are at the whims of the wider market." "Yes, sir. Would you like any music this evening?" Brian didn't reply. There goes my tip, I thought. I decided to remain silent for the rest of the drive. Brian should be out of my car less than half an hour, and I could just mess around on my phone until I had to drive him home later. What's the worst thing that could happen? As I made my way downtown, small houses and apartment complexes transformed into larger buildings. The traffic was non-existent, which was unusual. I noticed there was only one other car on the road ahead of us. The thing that caught my eye was the unusually large number of people that were on the streets right now. Usually there would be more cars on the road than people out at this time of night. I couldn't help but think that something was off, but I had no clue what it was. Was there some type of event thing taking place tonight? I took my eyes off the road and glanced around the street on either side. There were so many people on the sidewalk. Why were there so many people? The closer I looked at the stranger it became. None of these people were walking or even moving at all. Every single one of them was standing still. They were all staring off into the distance as if they were looking at something only they could see. All of them carried the same blank, emotionless expression. As I drove along, the amount of people steadily grew. I've only been to this town a few times, but this seems very odd, doesn't it? What exactly is going on here? I don't know. I never seen anything quite like this before. Maybe there's some kind of late-night festival or parade that I'm unaware of? I glanced from one side of the road to the other. There were so many people out. What were they all doing? No one seemed to be staring at any one thing in particular. Everyone was staring off in a different direction. The word that came to my mind was zombies. Do you see anything out there? Anything that they might be looking at? It looks like we might have the start of an zombie apocalypse on our hands. Brian took a look out his left window, and after a long moment he turned to his right. Brian seemed to be just as interested as me. I can't see a damn thing out there, but this is unsettling. Are people always like this around here? No, I can say without a doubt this has never happened before. Hell, I've never seen this many people on the streets at this time of night. I mean, you always have to be on the lookout for transients and drug heads in this areas, but it's not normally like this. Brian looked dumbfounded. It was as if his brain was trying to process what was going on, but no rational explanation came to mind. He shook his head before he spoke again. Well, the sooner we get to the party, the better. I don't want to be stuck downtown if there is a riot or something. How much longer until we arrive? I took a quick glance at the GPS before replying. The screen distorted for a few seconds before flickering back to normal. We're about 15 minutes away. A few minutes and a few blocks later, things took a turn for the worse. As I drove along, the people gradually made a shift in their mannerisms. Instead of staring out in the different directions, they all began to turn their attention to us. It was almost as if I could feel the eyes directly on me as I drove. It felt like they were staring into my soul. It was unsettling and sent a shiver down my spine. This just keeps getting more odd by the minute. Everyone is focused on us now. I can see that. At least before, they were all fixated on something else. Now it's as if they formed a type of hive mind. The light up ahead turned red, and I brought the car to a stop. The car that had been ahead of us also caught the light, and we stopped side by side. I was finally able fully to take in my surroundings. I looked around the intersection only to see more people standing around. They were all staring directly at us. It didn't matter where they stood. The collective gaze fell on us. What the hell are they doing? Is this some kind of mass hysteria? I shook my head, trying to rid myself of the thought. I simply couldn't believe my eyes. The car next to us rolled down the passenger side window and shouted something. She wanted me to roll down my window as well. I obliged. As I rolled the window down till the cold infiltrated and sucked the heat out of the car in a matter of moments. I began to shiver again. I've never seen anything like this. Do you have any idea what's going on? At this point, I'm assuming you know just as much about this as we do. We've been seeing people like this ever since we left about 20 minutes ago. It's the damnedest thing. It only just started happening in the last hour. On my way home from work, and at first I didn't really notice it. At one point it just sort of caught my attention. Have you ever noticed now there's hardly any cars on the road? At this point I'm just hoping to get home safe before something happens. I'm starting to get really creeped out. It's the start of the zombie apocalypse. Just be thankful we haven't been attacked yet. The lady laughed half-heartedly as the light turned green. Oh God, thanks for that. That's exactly what I need to be imagining right now. Well, you be safe out there. She gunned it down the road, clearly in a hurry to get home. I smiled as I rolled my window back up. I shivered violently now. I cranked the heater as high as it would go and pressed on the gas. I continued down the street, but I started to be more cautious. Occasionally, I glanced around to everyone still staring at us. Geez, it's freezing out tonight. You're telling me. What a freak show tonight turned into. I'm almost tempted to tell you to turn around and just get us out of here. Your wish is my command. But we're less than 10 minutes away now. It's your call. Watch out! I saw it as soon as Brian shouted. The man had walked into the road, and I swerved to avoid him. Multiple people were now making their way onto the road up ahead, and I saw a group of 4 people coming off the sidewalk. I sped up and made it past them before they could block us. I saw brake lights up ahead and realized the driver from the stoplight was having the same problems. The vast majority of people were still standing statically on the sidewalk, but there were some stragglers walking around in the middle of the road. Were they trying to block me, I thought? It was merely an odd occurrence at first, but now it just seemed dangerous. Regardless of how strenuously everyone was acting, I wasn't trying to hit any of them. I just had no clue what was going on. My fear heightened as a young man started sprinting back and forth across the road. When I first saw these people, it was just a bit odd. Odd things are nothing new to me, though. I have dealt with them at various stages of my life. Usually when things happen, it is just an odd coincidence or situation in passing. I try to wrap my head around it, and I can't. The interaction becomes one that I scroll away. I usually bring up these oddities as a joke or story later. That was not the case this time. I was still in the middle of this horrible experience and wasn't sure how it would end. What the heck is going on? Can you turn us around and get us out of here? Look for a side street or something to turn down. Fuck this and fuck the party. Get us out of here. I heard Brian, but I didn't reply to him. I was so focused on driving around all these random people. I knew that as soon as I got the chance, I would find a way out. Weaving in between groups of people that were now pouring into the streets, I spotted a small window in between 2 groups. If I could just make it in between them, I would have a straight shot at the side street to the left. I turned the car as far as right as I could before cutting it hard to the left. By some miracle, I managed to split right between them as their outstretched hands swiped along the side of the car. The bottom of the car scraped as I hit a pothole at the intersection. The street was only marginally better, but at least there was no one in the road. Holy shit, what the? Nice driving. But we're not out of this yet. Slow down a little and turn on the radio. Let's see if there is some kind of broadcast on what's going on. Yeah? Yeah, give me a second. I'm shaking. I think I'm running on adrenaline right now. With a shaky hand, I reached for the radio and turned it on. I switched the stations from FM to AM and turning the dial hoping to find a broadcast. Any type of news station that could relay some information about what was happening. I finally found a station that was cutting in and out the radio announcer. For those who are just joining us, we are repeating this breaking story for this. We go any further, we kindly remind you to stay off the roads tonight and in your doors and windows. Local authorities have reported a rash of downtown area. It is recommended that be avoided if at all possible. We repeat, avoid the downtown area if you cause for the unusual behavior that has been seen tonight. The radio cut off, and the car was filled with static. I kept turning the dial, hoping for something else, anything else. I switched it back to FM to check for those frequencies as well. There was nothing. Yet, at least the roads look clear this way. Are you all right, Tom? Yeah, I'm all right. Still shaking, but I think that's the least of our problems right now. They're trying to get us out of here in one piece. I drove the car steadily down the road. Hordes of people were still on the sidewalk, watching us as we passed by. Took the next left, hoping it would be clear enough for me to get us out of here. I sped up, hoping the faster I went, the faster these people would thin out once again. I continued messing with the radio dial. As I drove, I had no success. I needed to know what was going on, because none of it made any sense. That moment, I couldn't help but think of the poor lady in the car. Had she gotten out all right? About 200 yards ahead, the sidewalks cleared as everyone stepped off the curb and stumbled into the road. The same happened behind us. These people were boxing us in. If I could just find another opening, it could maybe get around. I could maybe then get around them. I glanced around frankly, but it was no use. There was no opening. We were completely surrounded. I had to stop the car. There was no way I could run them all over. Even if I tried, I might get the car stuck. I brought the car to a stop as people covered on all sides, closing the gap between us. Fuck, what do I do? What should I do, Brian? Brian looked out the car from all sides. He was hyperventilating now. There was no escape. I don't know. There's nothing we can do. We're completely surrounded. Lock the doors and windows. Can they even get inside? With these many people, if they want to get in, they will find a way. It will only be a matter of time. Fully surrounded now, the people began banging on the car from all sides. I could feel my heart drop into my stomach, and I yelled, "What do you want from us?" The banging stopped. A lone person among the crowd spoke. "He has returned. Tonight he returns to purge those unworthy." I almost jumped out of my seat as there was a loud crash on the top of the car. The ceiling dented in slightly, and the back windows blew out, shattering glass everywhere. Oh my God, what the hell was that? Before I had the time to process what happened, the ceiling was torn open with surprising ease. A large, scaly hand emerged through the roof. Razor-like claws protruded from each finger as it felt around inside the car. The hand grabbed Brian around his neck and pulled him from the back seat. The jagged metal pieces that now protruded from the makeshift hole in the roof sliced Brian's arms and legs wide open on his ascension. Brian's blood-curdling screams and cries for help were the only thing that could be heard in the night. They filled the quiet streets around me, echoing off into the distance. "Help me, Tom! Help me!" Couldn't move. I just sat there in utter shock. I thought that if I so much as moved, my fate would end the same way. My mouth fell open as I glanced out the hole in the car's roof. A humanoid creature loomed there. Its face was hidden in the shadows despite the bright moonlight, and I couldn't make out any features. It held Brian in both hands, examining him closely as he screamed for his life. Blood dripped down Brian's legs and fell into the cab of the car. The creature was twice as tall and twice as wide as any person I had ever seen before. It had thick, transparent wings upon its back, and it seemed to shimmer mysteriously. Its scales gleamed as it continued to examine Brian. Apparently satisfied with what it had found, it leapt from the car and into the sky. Its wings flapped widely as it climbed higher and higher. Brian screamed, filled the air until eventually they could be heard no more. The creature had captivated the people that were surrounding the car. With surprising motivation, they all began to flee. Chants of him filled the air as it flew into the sky, and they all began to follow after it, looking up as they went. Within a moment, I was completely alone in the middle of the road. I wept. The emotional toll was too much for me to bear. A few minutes passed by before I put the car in gear once more. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I had to get away. Wow, that was a creepy story. It kind of reminds me of Jeepers Creepers. You know, that like weird monster guy with the wings and he's eating people. Ugh, crazy. I hope everyone had a great Thanksgiving and y'all spent some time with family. Today, I'm thinking about putting up some Christmas decorations. I'm really excited. All right, I'll see y'all this coming up week on Tuesday. But until then, remember, it's scary out there. Love y'all so much. Please like and subscribe. Story 1. This is an experience I've had about 2 years ago, and every time I'm outside to get inside my house at night, I cannot stop thinking about it. It was late around 12 to 2 a.m. Sometime around then, I was dropping off my girlfriend at the time back to her house. It was raining kinda hard, but then stopped by the time I reached my house after I dropped her off. There's this Korean church across the road near my house, which is dimly lit. I'm looking at the church to get my keys to unlock the door, and then there's a person that is at least 6 feet tall staring at me from the church in the dimly lit area, which I should add in. The light was illuminating this cross that was underneath the light. Anything underneath this light you can 100% see. It was dim for me because I'm at least, 100 feet away from it. A very organish old light. The figure that was standing in the spotlight that the light was giving, it was still pure black. I could not see a facial expression or anything. After this incident, I tried to reenact this experience. I could see at least how human and lively they were. This figure was neither of that. My heart begins to start beating quicker because I start thinking to myself, like, that's not right. And it wasn't. I'm still struggling to get the keys into the lock because I keep looking over and focusing on the figure. I finally have my keys in the door and unlocking it to finally go inside as I turn to see what the thing was one last time. It was running towards me. Its arms were above its head and it was waving them, but they were super wiggly. I don't even know how to explain it. It's as if you were to strum a guitar string and the string waves and wiggles. Its arms were doing exactly like that. It's about 40 to 50 feet away from me at this point, and I still can't see no facial expressions or nothing. It seemed like it was darker than the night sky. I hurry up and go inside and lock the door behind me. Scared to look out the window. It's the next day, still shocked and scared. I've never seen it since then. I started calling it the Wiggler. It just kind of suits it. I have many other stories that are way more intense if you want to hear more. I'm always experiencing new stuff. Story 2.
I've experienced a lot of paranormal activities in my life. This one happened 15 years ago when I was 7. On the weekend, I used to visit my grandparents. They lived in an old house not so far from where I lived at the time. I remember that I've heard kids playing a game before enter at my grandparents' home, so that I thought they were my cousins. When I got inside, I saw that none of my cousins were there. I got confused and asked my grandma if she had heard anything. She said that it was probably my imagination. I felt okay and didn't ask anything more. Later at night, after watching some cartoons with my grandpa, I went to sleep, and when I entered my bedroom, I felt a different sensation, like if I wasn't alone. But I wasn't the kind of kid that gets scared easily, so I went to sleep, and then when I was sleeping, I woke up suddenly, and I heard children's voices near me. Everything was so dark, so I could just see some silhouette of little-sized people or whatever it was. They were about 40 centimeters, maybe 1.3 feet. They were running and laughing. I got scared that time, and I closed my eyes and started to run to the direction of my grandparents' bedroom. I told them what happened, and, of course, they didn't believe me. They said that was probably just a dream. I slept with them because I was too scared. On that night, I could hear them from the other room. They were really loud. In the next morning, I told my mother about it, and she believed me. She said that it had happened to her, too, when she was young. She said that they are some kind of fairy that lived there with my grandparents, and they are somehow trapped there. And also, only kids could see them. She also said that when she was younger, she used to leave candies to them so that they didn't disturb you while you slept at night. And the other night I did it, and I haven't heard anything more.
Story 3. I'm 22, and since when I was a kid, I always suffered from insomnia. And every time I sleep, I have terrible nightmares. And sometimes I dream with things that will happen in the future with extreme precision. I used to write things about the future in some notes. And when those things happen, I'd show my friends. And we always get scared with the precision of the facts. But the point here isn't that. I'm here to share some of the nightmares with weird creatures, and sometimes they come to reality. I remember that I had this dream that I tried to fight a putrid creature that feeds on sadness and depression. A weird creature looks like an old putrid man with pure gray skin. It sneaks into your house and attacks you while you're sleeping. This creature can hide anywhere. Doesn't matter the size of place, somehow it fits there. 2 nights after I had this dream, I were alone with my girlfriend watching TV in my room. And then I look at the window and I saw this creature. But I wasn't dreaming. I just saw it. I thought that I was getting schizophrenic due to the lack of sleep. I was pretending that there was nothing there until my girlfriend saw the same creature in the window and started to scream. I was just telling her to calm down, and the creature suddenly disappeared, just like a smoke in the air. She told me about what she saw, and I had a note written about the creature. I used to create histories about my dreams and nightmares, and I create stories about the creatures I see. After that, she got terrified and started to read my little stories, and it just got worse. Story number 4. I think cell phones are the new way spirits contact us. I'm starting to believe this is a new way they communicate with us because 3 months ago, me and my sister was on the phone and she was telling me how much she missed our auntie. He had just passed away. My sister said, I still cannot believe that she passed away. Then we heard my aunt's voice through the phone. It was not real words, but it was definitely her sound and the tone of her voice. We both said, "Did you hear that?" at the same time. It was definitely our aunt. Then yesterday, me and my sister was in my room and we were trying to pay a bill over the phone. We heard a man's voice come through the phone, and then it got quiet and we just looked at each other. It's like we both knew that it was a spirit and it was communicating the same way our aunt did. So I said, "Who are you?" The phone was on speaker, and the manly tone came through on the phone again. There were no words, it was just the tone of a voice again. I asked it a few more questions, and it answered back. We were very freaked out and hung up. Then we forgot to call back and pay the bill altogether. Later on, I realized that I was thinking about my grandpa when that happened. Now I wonder if it was him. Story number 5.
The next story will tell about a priest whose story began in 1883 when he was appointed rector of the Archangel Michael Church in the village of Kozakia Lopan. The priest was very loved, and many warm memories of him are still preserved. But in 1918, change came. The Revolution and Civil War brought a terrible time when brother stood up against brother. The village passed from hand to hand like a leaf in the wind. In December 1918, a gang came to the walls of the priest's house. They were interested in church values. The priest refused to hand them over, and he was severely tortured, but he remained silent. The bandits dragged him onto the street and killed him right in front of his house on December 28th. He was buried in a local cemetery, but unfortunately, the grave has not survived. Local residents say that from time to time, the sounds of church chants can be heard from this house, as if they continue to sound forever. But sometimes, especially at night when someone passes by the house, they catch the smell of incense, which brings back memories of the priest. Another mysterious aspect of this story is that some claim to have seen an old man with a large beard sitting on the porch of a house. These unusual phenomena give this story even more mystery and mysticism. And so our team of researchers arrived at this place. We found this house. It is small and very old. The man who guided us told us many stories related to this house. While we were looking around the house and talking, suddenly the door inside the house slammed shut by itself. Whether this was a paranormal event or just a draft, we cannot say for sure. But for me, it was an amazing discovery, since this story became a valuable addition to our collection.
Story number 6. You may have guessed, but this took place in Colorado. The farm itself was way off the beaten path, which was perfect for growing a crop people liked to steal and made it interesting for the only security guard there that night. It was apparently used to grow beans throughout the 1900s before some bright-eyed interpreters bought it to get a foot in the cannabis business. It was completely surrounded by woods on all sides. Upon entering the complex, you're met with several old farmhouses. Only one was used for offices, while the other two were just storage. This was called the admin area, and it's on the north end of the property. To the east, west, and south, you have 3 growing fields, all approximately 100 acres. Just past the admin area, you have 7 greenhouses encompassed by a fence and a large garage attached to it. Was used to house greenhouse supplies. Across the lot from that, another garage for farm equipment. So, a very large area for one lone security guard. Now, this was a brand new contract, so I had no one to show me around and was basically tasked with creating security procedure for the other guards to follow. To that end, I was working 7 days a week, 4 p.m. until 6 a.m., until I had everything ironed out. My first day, I did a walkthrough of the place with my boss, the farm owner, and then was left on my own to figure it out. Thankfully, I did have a decent little office in the admin building. We even had an 8-channel security system set up. So weeks go by and nothing weird has happened, not even an off feeling. If anything, it was beyond peaceful. I figured out a good security routine and made a policy out of it for a few new guards to follow. After that, life was easy. Do my checks, read Fanatic, watch YouTube, glance at the cameras, repeat. I was doing just that at about 2 a.m. when I see a black mass jump over the greenhouse fence. I bolt up, lock my office, and run down there, weapon drawn. Now, that may seem like a dramatic response, but I should be the only person for literally miles around. The main road is the only way in by vehicle, and it's gated. Plus, the gate is right next to my office, so I would have heard or seen someone approach by vehicle. And foot traffic at that hour and in the location, well, it's probably not a mailman. I get to the greenhouse area gate and quietly let myself in. I start checking greenhouses one by one. After about 20 minutes, I find absolutely nothing. Find the camera in question and looked around the area, but found nothing out of place. I end up doing my entire security check early, just to be sure. Then head back to my office. I plan to review the footage because the fence is 8 foot tall with an additional foot of barbed wire across the top. That in itself freaks me out because I've been outside for over an hour before I realized that only thing that can clear that jump is a mountain lion. So I hustled back to my office. But my monitor, black, no signal feed. The hard drive in the brand new DVR is fried. At this point, it's weird, but not necessarily paranormal. A few days go by. We get the hard drive replaced and all is well. It's probably around midnight and I'm doing my checks by the backside of the greenhouse area when out of nowhere a blood-curdling scream, and it's damn close. My body goes cold. This very well could be the big cat I suspected from a few nights earlier. Find the nearest gate and let myself into the greenhouse area. Better in there than out in the open. But then I hear crying. Unmistakably female. Diagram shaking, snot slinging, weeping. That's not a cat. I almost wish it was. But I have to look. It's my job. Now behind the greenhouse area, there is a dirt road in front of the center field that circles all the way around it. This road connects to the perimeter roads for the 2 sides of the fields. Think of 3 big circles arranged in a loose shape of a triangle, with the greenhouses in the middle. Well, this crying sounded like it was coming from that center road. I started to approach very slowly. I can still hear it clear as day. It's getting louder and louder the closer I get. It's almost nightmarish until it just stops. So I stopped. I stayed there completely still for quite a long time. There was nothing. People don't just stop sobbing. There's at least sniffling, maybe that hiccuping when you try and catch your breath. But it just went from wailing to nothing in one beat. After that, I always felt uncomfortable towards the back of the field. I heard the scream several more times after that, always around midnight, and always from the same area. Never went to investigate after my initial experience. By this time, harvest has come and gone and the fields are bare. I'm still needed, however, because they used the greenhouses throughout the winter. As the seasons changed, so did my responsibilities. Rather than patrolling the fields, my focus was the greenhouses. Not just for theft, also ensuring that the heaters continued to work throughout the cold nights. To this end, I took parking my Jeep next to the greenhouse area so I didn't have to make the long trek through the snow from the security office to the greenhouses. I could see everything I needed to from my driver's seat, and my Jeep heater was infinitely better than the little space heater in my office. I had a routine. Start the Jeep, get it nice and hot, then turn it off. I kept my windows cracked because security work at night is 50% listening to weird shit. I didn't have to listen hard. A loud bang immediately removed any drowsiness I may have had. Something just hit my vehicle. I don't get out immediately. I took a good look around, listened for footsteps, checked my mirrors frantically. But there's nothing. Then it happens again. Bang! On the roof of my Jeep. In the dirt, tumbles down my windshield. Someone's throwing dirt clumps at me? I call my supervisor and explain what's going on. She says she's on her way and will be there in about half an hour, as she is working at another farm not too far away. I reach to the passenger seat and grab my spotlight, the big kind of spotlight, 1,000 lumens, and allows me to see the back of every field. The kind of spotlight that will land you in jail if you shine it at a plane. I hop out of my Jeep and climb on the roof. It had to have come from the backfield. I began panning back and forth with my handheld beam of daylight. I don't immediately see anyone, so I start with verbal commands. Come out. You're trespassing. Announce yourself. I'm authorized to use lethal force. Yada yada. No response. I stay posted up there until my supervisor arrives. We decided to walk the perimeter of all 3 fields and found absolutely nothing. By this time, it's almost 3 a.m., and we were back at the Jeep talking and smoking. Then a whistle, like the playful 2-tone whistle that says, I'm over here. My supervisor just gave me this look like, seriously? I told her that's the kind of thing I deal with at this place. She stuck around for the rest of the shift, but nothing else happened. Stayed quiet until Christmas Day when I picked up a shift for the sweet holiday pay. I also opted to stay in the office for the sake of my Jeep. That's when the music started. Long, flowing classical music that you might hear playing quietly at a fancy party. I listened, then stood up and listened some more. Walked to the doorway of the security office and stopped to listen again. It's still there. I stepped out and it stops. I paused to dead silence. I stepped back into my office and I can hear it again. I poke my head out and it stops. I lean back in and it starts again. It was almost cartoonish. It went back and forth for a while and gradually faded away. There's nothing in that old building that plays music. No radio, PA systems, and no one had forgotten a cell phone. It wasn't my cell phone, as I actually tried to record it, but picked up nothing but white noise. I walked outside and the off chance it was humming from miles away, but nothing. I only ever heard that music on Christmas Day. After that, I had actually gotten permission to bring my husky to work. He loved the farm, especially in the snow. But some nights he wouldn't leave my side. He would actually growl at things I had no perception of, which you know how strange it is if you own a husky. The strangest thing about this place was you could just tell if it was going to be a normal night or not when you got there. Some days the atmosphere was just different. A lot of other little things happened there, but those were the big ones. If I get a decent response on here, I may share a few more stories from my times in the Marines or during the time as a cop. Thank you for your time. Story 7. When Paranormal Activity first came out on DVD, I watched it at my friend's apartment. She lived in an independent living portion of an orphanage. I've always loved ghost haunting movies, and that one really freaked me out. The freakiest part happened at the end of the movie. I was pretty unnerved by the end of the movie. After the end scene, the credits started to roll. However, they were not normal credits that you can read. The names were flying by so quickly and on the screen, they are just a blur. My friend and I thought that it was really strange, so she paused it so we could read the names. When she paused it, the screen showed a ton of tiny names, like 200 of them. And every single name was my first name with a different last name. My blood ran cold and I got chills all over. I could think of no rational explanation for why every single name on the screen was my own name. Surely, there couldn't have been 200s of my name working on the film, and for all the names to be grouped together instead of separated by their role in the film. It was so strange. When we pressed play again, all of a sudden the credits were rolling normally. I've watched the movie since then and the credits were normal. It just happened that one time. Needless to say, I stayed at her apartment that night because I did not want to be alone. I felt like some entity was singling me out, and I was pretty freaked out and feeling on edge. Later on, I hear stories about how the orphanage she was staying at was haunted, and I totally believed it after that experience. That was the last story. Stay safe, and remember, it's scary out there. Please like and subscribe.
I live inside my own world of make-believe. Kids screaming in the cradles, profanities. I see the world through ice covered in ink and bleach. Cross